Chapter 2898. She turned around and walked away, afraid that she would pounce on him. She had come back so many times, and every time. What should she do? She liked him more. Wei Bai looked up seriously and stared at the lights on the ceiling. If this went on, she would die young. She didn't want to transmigrate. She didn't want to conquer him. She just wanted to be sick of him and be his little wife. She didn't want to go anywhere. Then she would die a shorter life than him. A perfect life. She was so happy. She talked to the system about this idea. The system was silent for a while before saying, "What about him?" Bai Weiwei finally reacted to the meaning of this sentence. She pursed her lips. Well, that's true. She didn't think about it carefully. When she first met Yi Yuxuan, he had a robot personality. But now, because she kept clinging to him, he started to soften and have feelings for her. If she lived a short life, what would she do if she kept him? Wei Bai turned on the TV. Her eyes wandered a little, and then she stared at the colorful scenes for a while. Then she said to the system faintly, "Then let's continue. I want to live a long life." In this world, there were only a few people who lived a long life. Yi Yuxuan might not be able to live 100 years without worries. When she was 100 years old, she would die later than him. Then he wouldn't feel bad. Wei Bai pulled the pillow and thought seriously. Then she asked, "How much is my life?" The system flipped. Well, 15500, and it's still rising. It will reach 16,000 after one night. 16,000 was the limit. If she didn't transmigrate, she could only stop at this place. To accommodate the blessings, luck, and life. They all needed the connection between the host and Yi Yuxuan to maintain. If she didn't transmigrate, she and Yi Yuxuan wouldn't have a continuous connection. He wouldn't be able to forcefully rob more luck. He could only watch as Yi Yuxuan's powerful gravitational force of providence began to take away Wei Bai's providence again. After all, he had to take away someone else's fate and life. It was taboo to begin with. How could it be that easy? Of course, the system did not mention this. Instead, it simply said, if you're really tired, then rest. Your lifespan now has about 40 more years. To her, he was indeed a little short-lived. But these 40 years of life were all healthy. She would never be in a situation where a small cold could kill her. His heart disease would not recur. The prerequisite was that she had to leave Yi Yuxuan. Wei Bai rested her chin on the pillow and stared at the television as she said, "I can't bear to. I'm still a short-lived ghost. I can't win against Yi Yuxuan in life. In the future, I'll happily leave him behind, but he won't feel good." Back in the real world, all her emotions returned. In addition, she hadn't been able to return in time for the past few times. When she saw the men in the plane, she was also touched. The earlier she died, the happier she would be. Wei Bai muttered, "And if I die early, what will I do if he takes a fancy to another little vixen?" A person like Yi Yuxuan was still handsome even when he was old, and his family background and accumulated wealth. There were many little vixens chasing after him. Wei Bai smiled coldly. "If I don't die, I'll wait until he dies. If he dares to look at other little vixens, I'll kill him." System, you're afraid of all kinds of things. You're just afraid that the male lead will have a long life and have more little vixens. This was very host. Yi Yuxuan wiped his hands and came out. He saw Wei Bai nestled on the sofa, hugging a cushion and waiting for food. He paused in his footsteps and suddenly walked over. He lowered his head and kissed her lips. Chapter 2899. It was a casual and natural kiss. His tone was a little intimate. "Let's eat." In those worlds, countless vicissitudes and heaviness were turned into this faint sentence. He still felt that he was lucky, even if he had to endure the pain of being cut into pieces. But he could meet her, kiss her. Yi Yuxuan didn't understand what happiness felt like before, but after meeting her, he knew. The meal was sumptuous. At the dinner table, the two relatives watched the dog food flying. Wei Bai, Xian, eat more. Here, I'll give you a piece of rib. Yi Yuxuan calmly gave her a piece of beef. Bai Changyan ate the rice and watched sadly. He watched. The piece of chicken he liked was given by his daughter to the man who stared at him and threw snacks at him. If Yi Yuxuan hadn't been raped by his daughter, he really didn't want this kind of son-in-law. His aura was too strong, and his ability was too awesome. It was good that he was good to his daughter. If he met any true love in the future, it was not appropriate to deal with them. But when he thought of the mess in his company, well, his son-in-law was still good. At least his workability was really very good. Suddenly, a piece of vegetable appeared by Changyan's bowl. Qin Xiu said, "Eat more, in-law." Bai Changyan also gave him a piece of potato. That's right. Potatoes are filling and can save supper. In fact, they were eating dog food. They were also full, but they still ate and pretended that they didn't eat dog food. After dinner, Qin Xiu took out a red packet. It's almost the new year. I'm going on a business trip recently. There's a surgery waiting for me. I'm afraid that when I come back, I won't be able to make it to the new year. Give me the red packet first. There were still a few days before New Year's Eve. Yi Yuxuan focused on Wei Wei Bai's illness. He went to the company less. He went out less. He didn't feel anything about the new year. The only thing that made his mood fluctuate a little was that some time ago, the company's employees went home on holiday. It led to a lot of trivial matters in the company. He also dealt with some of them. The senior management didn't go on holiday and still worked hard in the company. The salary was too high. It wouldn't make sense if he didn't sell his life. After Yi Yuxuan finished dealing with some trivial matters, she felt that it was too time-consuming, so she doubled the year-end bonus for the higher-ups. And then things would multiply. Yi Yuxuan looked at Qin Xiu's red envelope indifferently and then took it. There were two of them. Qin Xiu, one for Wei Wei. Bai Changyan didn't prepare a red packet since he didn't need to go on a business trip. Now that he had Yi Yuxuan, all he had to do was take care of his health. Therefore, it was the same to wait until the new year to give him a red packet. Yi Yuxuan was expressionless. She just said, "If it's dangerous, make a call." He asked Qin Xiu to be Wei Wei Bai's doctor. Most people did not dare to let Qin Xiu perform the operation, because no one had the ability to surpass him. Those who could make him relent and perform the surgery were not small fries. Qin Xiu smiled. "It's okay, I'll be back soon." He knew that it wouldn't be a problem for him. Yi Yuxuan looked at them coldly and opened the door. "Okay, take care." Qin Xiu and Bai Changyan, then they stood at the door. The door was slammed shut again. This kind of strength was not like Yi Yuxuan's indifferent temperament at all. Finally, Qin Xiu confirmed to Bai Changyan, "Yes, he just hates it when we disturb his relationship." Bai Changyan, "Blame it on my daughter's charm." Qin Xiu, he suddenly knew where Wei Wei Bai's narcissistic attribute came from. Yi Yuxuan was just about to walk away from the door. / collections below to record the reading record of this time. Chapter 2900. But the doorbell rang. Bai Changyan and Qin Xiu had keys, so they rarely rang the doorbell. He turned around and opened the door again. It was the company's staff. They brought a box. After Yi Yuxuan took it, he closed the door and walked to the living room. Wei Wei Bai was playing a game. The little game from last time had not been uninstalled yet. Her current level was enough to make a bunch of girls chase after her and shout to be part of her harem group. That was the effect of spending money. Her transvestite account made her feel like a big boss. Yi Yuxuan put the box on the table and looked up at the screen of her playing the game. Then he looked away and did not say anything. Although there were still a bunch of girls shouting to marry Wei Wei Bai's transvestite account. But she did not agree to any of them. She was even stingy and did not buy clothes for others. Yi Yuxuan knew that if she wanted to buy something now, she would buy it for his account. He was not interested in this kind of game. But if Wei Wei Bai liked to play, he needed to be online often to keep an eye on her, so that she would not buy skin for others. Yi Yuxuan opened the ribbon of the box. When he was about to open the box, he suddenly paused. His voice was calm. "Remember last time? I took you to that small shop at the entrance of the alley to drink tea?" Wei Wei Bai was confused. She held her phone and shook her head. "When did this happen?" It seemed like a long time ago. No, not long ago. In reality, it had only been half a year or how many months. It was a clothing store, and the boss was a custom-made designer. It was a small shop by the roadside. The atmosphere was good. He took her to customize the engagement dress. Although at that time, she was thinking of breaking off the marriage with him. So she did not care about this. Yi Yuxuan saw that she had come back to her senses. He lowered his eyes slightly and stared at the box for a while before slowly opening it. His voice was calm. He didn't want the engagement dress, so I asked him to modify it and customize a cheongsam for you. Girls like this kind of dress. Wei Wei Bai glanced at the box. Inside, a cheongsam was arranged neatly. The light blue gradient silk material had a warm luster. Compared to the best seed material, mutton fat jade, it gave off a moist feeling. This is a fine piece of cloth. Yi Yuxuan reached out and picked up the clothes. Her movements were unusually calm. He didn't seem to think that there was any meaning in a man giving clothes to a woman. The cheongsam was not a very traditional style, but had a little more design. On the front piece of cloth, there was an elegant floral pattern that was extremely elegant. Even under the light was a matte. The elegance of a woman was reflected in this dress. Yi Yuxuan's voice softened. In the future, if you want to get engaged, I'll take you there. Wei Wei Bai looked left and right. Then she touched her chin as if she was thinking about something. Yi Yuxuan glanced at her, but didn't say anything. He didn't even ask her, like it or not. She had never wronged herself. If she didn't like it, he didn't need to ask. She would just throw it away and not pretend to like it for any other reason. So when Wei Wei Bai got up, picked up the cheongsam, and said, "I'll wear it for you." Yi Yuxuan looked at her quietly. He seemed to be looking at the expression on her face, wondering if she had any bad ideas. Wei Wei Bai put the cheongsam on her arm and walked towards the room. As she walked, she said, "This dress is of good quality. If it fits, hide it for me to wear." Yi Yuxuan watched her walk into the room and close the door. But it wasn't locked. He stood there silently for a while. Suddenly, he heard the door half open. A soft and white wrist reached out and shook gently. Xian Xian. She was behind the door, her voice soft and seductive. "I can't zip it up. Come over and help me." "Cheongsam, does it have a zipper?" Yi Yuxuan was silent for a while. His eyes deepened. Finally, he walked forward slowly. He opened the door and walked in. // Chapter 2901. The cheongsam fit her very well. The delicate fabric made the light colors look beautiful, as if they had come to life. The luster of the silk flowed on the colors. There was no zipper, only toggle. Wei Wei Bai sat in the room on the table with some decorations and ancient books. She stepped lightly on the chair with the tip of her foot. Her delicate and fair calves were faintly discernible at the slit of the cheongsam. She had a calm expression on her face as she reached out to stroke her long hair. When she saw Yi Yuxuan walk in, her eyes moved and her lips curled up slightly. Her tone was still casual and calm. "Xian Xian, look at my zipper. Isn't it a little difficult to pull it off?" As Wei Wei Bai spoke, she pulled at her collar very naturally. A toggle popped out, revealing half of her shoulder. Yi Yuxuan's footsteps stiffened. His eyes fell on the delicate white skin that was half hidden under her collar. Then his breathing became heavier, as if he was suppressing something. He reached out and tugged at his collar. He didn't correct her. There was no zipper. She had always been able to make things sound like they were true. In so many worlds, her lying skills were simply making him want to die. Yi Yuxuan exhaled lightly. Then he walked over. There was a hint of hoarseness in his calm voice. "Turn around." Wei Wei Bai pursed her lips slightly. Her charm was natural. She twirled a strand of her long hair with her fingers. The ends of her eyes were slightly raised. When her gaze fell on him, it was like a small hook that made the person who was being looked at feel numb. "Turn around for what?" Yi Yuxuan was silent for a moment. Finally, he shifted his gaze away and landed on the table where she was sitting. She was sitting on two casually folded ancient books. He would occasionally flip through these books. Most of them were left there because if he flipped through them too much, the ancient books would fall apart. The books were not easy to repair. He read them once and remembered them, so he threw them away and didn't care. He silently went through the contents of these ancient books in his heart. After that, he confirmed that he had calmed down and looked up at Wei Wei Bai. However, she had already turned her body sideways. Her cheongsam was silky smooth, accentuating her beautiful slender waist. And under that slender waist, that cough. Yi Yuxuan immediately raised his head slightly and calmly shifted his gaze away again. You, deliberately sitting like this, was simply testing the limits of his patience. Fortunately, He had just returned from that world, and his character had been tainted with some patience. He did not do anything that would make him lose his composure. His breath started to heat up. He could no longer suppress the hoarseness in his voice as he said softly, "Where is the zipper?" There was no zipper on the back of the Cheongsam. Wei Wei Bai rolled her eyes and said softly, "Who knows? Why don't you take a look at me?" Yi Yuxuan's eyes began to turn obscure and deep. He couldn't put his fingertips properly. He began to tug at his sleeves and touch his watch. Don't do anything else. He felt that even if he was a tortoise, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back. On purpose. Did he ignore something just now that made her angry? His mind went through the events of waking up, but because the oxygen content in the air decreased, he began to have difficulty breathing. This causes usually clear mind to be a little dazed for a moment. However, Wei Wei Bai still refused to give up. She sat diagonally, revealing her beautiful outline in a seductive manner. She revealed a standard smile of a vixen and was deliberately speaking softly. "Come over, She even stretched out her slender fingers and waved them in the air like bait for a fish. Button. Chapter 2902. Suddenly, her fingers were clasped. Yi Yuxuan had already taken 2 steps forward and was in front of her. He held her wrist with one hand and moved the other to her shoulder, sliding it down her back gently. "Maybe the zipper is more secretive. Let me look for it." His voice was extremely low. The obscurity in his eyes was also stained with a scorching light. Wei Wei Bai looked at his face that was inches away from her. The man's back was facing the light, and there was a look of forbearance on his usually indifferent face. His fingers were extremely gentle as they moved down the fabric of the Cheongsam. The calm man was breathing heavily at this moment, and there was a hint of ambiguity in his hot breath. Wei Wei Bai smiled and said casually, "You can look for it." It was as if she was deliberately seducing him, but she was so casual and indifferent that she was like a little fox that turned and ran after seducing him. There was no price to pay for seducing him at all. Yi Yuxuan's fingers paused. He did not continue moving down. Instead, he looked up and said in a low and gentle voice, "Are you angry?" She looked up at him and saw that the tips of his ears were red. As if on purpose, she reached out her leg to touch him. The man's eyes narrowed, and his thin lips pursed tightly. Then, Wei Wei Bai put away her clingy appearance and calmly reached out to push him. "No, it's just a test." Yi Yuxuan was silent for a moment, and finally his voice was trembling uncontrollably. "Test what?" Wei Wei Bai laughed heartlessly and jumped off the table. Her walking posture was extremely enchanting. She turned back and gave him a flirtatious look. People say that if a man gives a woman clothes he likes, it's to take them off himself. When she said this, she reached out and touched her lips lightly. "Do you want to take them off?" Yi Yuxuan's eyelashes drooped slightly, and he was about to answer, but he heard her voice become faint. "Even if you want to take them off, I won't let you. After the test, you're practically a ninja turtle." She thought that he would pounce on her the moment he entered the door. How could he still be so patient? Could it be that whether it was in this dimension or here, men from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would appear in droves? Yi Yuxuan was also one of them. Wei Wei Bai only thought about it for a moment before she turned around and walked towards the door. The fabric of the Cheongsam was unusually smooth. When she walked, it was like flowing water, outlining her beautiful figure. She took a step and slowly walked out. The sofa was still littered with pillows and cushions. The ceiling and doorway lights were on. The room was quiet. Other than them, everyone else had left, but there was still a sense of life. Thinking of Yi Yuxuan's house from the beginning, it was as cold as a grave. Everything was planned out, just like the urn, and during this time, she was fine, and Qinxiu was fine too. Her father came even more frequently. Moreover, he had to take care of her as a patient. Medical staff, nurses, cooks, and nannies who never stayed at home. They all came and went, and came and went. Of course it was popular. Moreover, her things were placed casually. Among the several pairs of slippers at the door, the couple's slippers were at the top. The toothbrush used for washing a bathroom was also a couple's pattern. The pattern at the bottom corner of the towel was 2 hearts. In her jewelry box, there was also a bracelet that he slowly put on. Last time, she asked him to do this. He really studied seriously. It was just that the aesthetic was too old-fashioned and there was no unexpected design at all. They all followed the rules and regulations. And the design fee style was unusually cold and unlikable. Chapter 2903. She smiled and walked to the sofa. She was about to reach for the remote control to turn on the TV. The previous world was set in ancient times. There was nothing entertaining. The system didn't play cartoons for her to watch all the time. When she came back, she felt that the TV was quite good. However, just as she bent down, a hand grabbed her waist. She was stunned. The man behind her had already hugged her and carried her easily. Her face was pressed against his clothes. The white shirt with the collar half open. The skin under the man's neck was close to her cheek. She blinked and didn't wait for him to say anything. They returned to the room. He kicked the door, closed with one foot. Then, Yi Yuxuan put her on the bed. He knelt on one knee on the bed and put his other foot on the ground. His expression was still indifferent. Under the hazy light, the man's cold and ascetic face showed a hint of forbearance. I think we have to figure out the position of the zipper. Wei Wei Bai opened her mouth and was about to refuse. The man was already holding her wrist with one hand. He raised his chin slightly, and his half-closed eyes were deep and dark. There's nothing behind. Maybe it's designed in front. Wei Wei Bai forced a smile. I'm tired. I want to rest. Every time she said this, Yi Yuxuan would be nervous about her body. He hoped that she would sleep early. She just saw that the clothes were good and wanted to wear to tease him. Weren't all robots able to endure? Why did she suddenly lose control? Yi Yuxuan's expression was indifferent, as if he wasn't affected at all. He didn't show any sense of urgency. Wei Wei Bai thought that she had convinced him. However, she saw that the man's cold and white face had a few more traces of red. His voice was low and dangerous. Tired. His words paused, and then he slowly lowered his head. The temperature of his skin was hot. Yes, I'm tired too. So rest. Rest. Rest for the night. When she woke up the next day, Wei Wei Bai wondered if her shoes were wet. How could one not wet their shoes when walking by the river? It was as if she was repeatedly courting death. Every day, she used a bad attitude to test Yi Yuxuan's tolerance. In the end, last night, she paid the price of the test. My waist hurts. She thought to herself with a cold expression, this won't do. Her relationship with him had not been confirmed yet. She was still a short-lived ghost. She actually couldn't hold it in anymore. Last night, the man had given her a chance to reject him. In the dark night, the lights were dim. His thin lips were strangely red, and his eyes were drooping. His voice was incomparably hoarse. You can, but you don't need me. She stared at him blankly. His fair face was dyed red with traces of sweat. It was a beautiful scene. Wei Wei Bai, who was about to reject him, felt her heart race. Then she couldn't hold it in anymore. She lay under the blanket and said to the system that was released from the little dark room with a blank expression, I spent so much effort, but I didn't dare to stay for too long each time. I was so worried that I was wasting my time. She had somehow gotten together with Yi Yuxuan. This made their relationship difficult to define. This is not a couple. Could it be that they were still friends? Wei Wei Bai felt that she was a scumbag last night. She had seduced a good man, and when she could go back on her word, it was already too late. In this situation now, could it be that she really had to endure a short life and stay here? No, she thought of the little vixen's body last night. That was beautiful. It made her want to live a long life. To get such beauty, she actually wanted to live a short life. To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click. Chapter 2904. No, she wanted to have this beauty for 100 years. She had to die later. Otherwise, if she died, what would happen if others coveted him? The system was about to comfort her. Wasn't it just sleeping? Didn't she sleep enough? But then it remembered that she didn't sleep much with the main body. It couldn't say such comforting words. Wei Wei Bai said to the system, Okay, I'll go to the next plane. The system said, Didn't you just sleep with her and leave immediately? And the person she slept with was cooking porridge for her in the kitchen. Wei Wei Bai covered her face. I'm too shy to face him. The system, do you want some face? Do you want some face, right? As expected, the host suddenly looked up and said with a smile, Isn't this because my life is too short and I don't have enough darts? I have to work hard to earn more life points and live a long life with little Xian Xian. The system, the host, was shameless. Forget it. He was used to it. Whenever she was shameless, he would be worried that her soul would be possessed. The system was expressionless as it watched her fall into a deep sleep. Then, it carried the soul ball and turned to run. While Yi Yuxuan wasn't here. Hurry up and leave. In the kitchen, the man who was looking at the porridge in the small pot suddenly noticed something and his eyes narrowed. Then, he turned off the fire and turned back to the room. Sure enough, he saw her lying on the bed, covered tightly with the blanket. Her eyelashes were slightly closed, and she was sleeping quietly. Yi Yuxuan stared at her silently for a while, then walked over and slowly touched her face. He reached out to pull the blanket for her, but his fingers paused as he realized something. Her black hair was casually scattered. Her body under the blanket was so fair that it looked like it was carved out of white jade. The man paused for a long time, then slowly covered her with the blanket again. Then, he began to look for clean pajamas. When he got the pajamas, he began to reach under the blanket to change her clothes. His usually cold expression tensed up a few times. When he was done, his face was already red. Those things were like a layer of glass. Although it was beautiful, there was no sense of substance. But now, Yi Yuxuan rubbed the bridge of his nose. Then he looked up at Bai Weiwei, who was sleeping quietly on the pillow after he adjusted her sleeping position. The corners of his lips finally curled up. Actually, I was just being polite last night. He asked her not to, for her to reject him, but he couldn't stop. If she refused, then the tie he casually placed on the side of the bed would bind her clean and white wrists. She couldn't struggle at all. He also wanted to respect her and let her choose. But he had overestimated his self-control. Yi Yuxuan blushed slightly and lowered his eyes. Then, he lifted the blanket with one hand and gently entered the bed, pulling her into his embrace. Then he lay down and let her sleep in his arms. Yi Yuxuan was not sleepy, so he stared at her face quietly. Then he slowly kissed her forehead, the tip of her nose, her cheeks, and finally her lips. His movements were gentle. There was no other meaning behind it. Finally, when his breath began to heat up, he stopped these intimate actions. He finally felt a little sleepy and closed his eyes slightly. This time, she left too quickly. Was it because their relationship had changed and she didn't dare to face it? Yi Yuxuan's expression was still calm when he thought of this. She didn't dare to face this emotion. It should be more that she wanted to change her own destiny. He finally felt a little sleepy and closed his eyes slightly. Or was it because she didn't have a good experience, so she despised him and went to another world in anger? Thinking of this, Yi Yuxuan, who was originally sleepy, woke up with a start. He silently looked at Weiwei Bai, who was sleeping soundly. After thinking for a long time, he finally got up. Then he opened his laptop and began to search for technical guidance in this area. The search result was, "Your search does not comply with the relevant regulations." Yi Yuxuan looked at it for a long time before he persevered and began to change the keywords. If it didn't work, he would change the browser. Chapter 2905. The system had just carried Weiwei Bai into the plane and was about to put her down. Suddenly, it heard an angry roar. It was the side quest. The side quest said, 004, you're actually in debt to fray me. What grudge do I have with you? The system said calmly, I don't have time to frame you. I'm an honest system. Didn't I say that I don't have much left in my account? The side quest shouted, you don't just have no left. What did you do to have so much debt? You were in charge of the main system's resources for a period of time. Who doesn't know that you're the system world's god of wealth? What did you do to ruin your account like this? The system said calmly, I bought a few things and it's like this. Besides, having power doesn't mean I'm rich. I'm fair and honest. How could I be corrupt? The side quest said coldly, it'd be weird if you weren't corrupt. You piece of trash. Who doesn't know that you split the wealth 30 to 70? You bigworm. The system said, aren't you in debt? Hurry up and get to work. Why are you wasting time talking? If the system was in debt, it would be deleted if it didn't pay it back quickly. Of course, he was out. Unless the main system woke up, no one could punish him. The side quest was different. It was a normal system. It was a system that gave out missions. Once it was in debt, the main system would automatically judge it as unqualified. It would be destroyed. The main system wouldn't care how much it was in debt. It would only look at the data. This was the cruelty of the main system. Of course, the system thought so too. It was good to get rid of the side quest. The difficulty level of their side quest was already lower than level. If the side quest was reformatted, then their side mission would return to being simple again. Then it and the host would have nothing to worry about in the future. Every time, the strategy was smooth sailing. It was the side quest that brought them trouble. It was impossible that the system didn't have any intention of getting rid of the side quest. Wasn't this an opportunity finally presented itself? He picked up a piece of golden diamond mango and took a bite. It definitely wasn't for the food of the side quest. It was going to destroy its corpse. Was he such a system with no ambition? Getting rid of the side quest was for the world, for the host, and for justice. Side quest. Do you still have the face? You are despicable. Your character is low. You're a big liar. The system replied, yes, you're right. Go and destroy yourself. He threatened his host to be disfigured every day. Bah, he couldn't fool it. The branch laughed coldly. Do you think I will be destroyed so easily? You are wrong. I will let you know the consequences of offending me. Even if I'm destroyed, I'll become a vengeful spirit and follow you. I want. The system was too busy to listen to its nagging. He searched for the host body. He saw a young girl's body and was about to put it in. I have another account, the system said faintly. The system replied, oh, so what? He had a debt of $1 million, so he had to pay it back slowly. Slowly, it was destroyed. Other systems might be able to return, but the side system was for assigning missions. It was very rare for it to contact the host directly. He definitely wouldn't be able to get anything good out of it. Side quest. I forgot to tell you, I've paid off a debt of 500,000 yuan and received a debt-deferred repayment voucher from the bank. Side quest. I still have one more plane of time to torment you to death. The side quest laughed. I'm going to take you down with me. Just you wait. System/crossover system. Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu. Download Transmigration system. Adonis, come here and read this on your phone. https://m. Sashu. Come. Chapter 2906. Side mission. Activating the irregular mission system. Along with my resentment revenge, I destroyed your host's body in this plane. There is no place for her to attach. How can she attack? Without a body, the target could not be seen. Without a body, if the favorability could increase, it would eat shit live. The system immediately flipped through the supermarket, wanting to hug the host's body before the curse was formed. In the attack plane, if one could not enter the destined body, the soul would be damaged. But his hands were too busy when he pressed a certain item that matched the soul of a body amulet. That beautiful girl's body. In front of him, it turned into a golden speck of light. Not only the body, but also the identity of the body was erased together. The root of the host's foothold in the plane. It all disappeared, and the product he bought also worked. Before the host's soul was damaged, the amulet automatically found a second body that matched the host's soul besides this body. The system did not have time to look at it. It stuffed the soul into the amulet. The amulet fell into a lotus pond. The golden light caused a weak little lotus flower to sway. The side mission fell silent. The system looked at the little lotus flower, extremely nervous. Wake up, Wei Wei. He was afraid that her soul would be dragged down by the lotus flower's vegetative nature. She slept until the mission failed. The lotus flower did not respond. The soul was already quietly asleep. It was not a coincidence, a complete body. It was a shell stuffed in, or a plant. It would make it difficult for her to wake up. The system spun around, desperately calling for her. It said all kinds of things. He suddenly thought of something and immediately flipped through the products on the supermarket shelves. Wake up! I'll buy you the badge of the world's most beautiful girl. Wei Wei Bai immediately turned her head happily, looking left and right. Where's the badge of the world's most beautiful girl? Let me see. The system, The little lotus flower swayed its leaves. The lotus petals were like her little faceplate, so happy that the petals were red. No, they were pink to begin with. Whether they were red or not, it was hard to tell. Wei Wei Bai did not realize that something was wrong with her. She put two tender leaves together, thinking that she was crossing her fingers, looking forward to putting it under her chin. Under the petals, the tender voice was very cute. "Where's my world's most beautiful girl?" "The system, here, most beautiful girl." He threw the badge out. Wei Wei Bai immediately reached out her hand, the leaves. The golden light spots emitted on her body. "Most beautiful girl." Leaves? Bai Weiwei's petal face looked down and saw that her green leaves were even greener. Her reflection in the water's water was more beautiful, and the luster was more perfect. What a beautiful lotus flower! Wei Wei Bai, the system, listen me. Bai Wei, you say it, I'm listening the system said. This plane of yours is a lotus spirit. Bai Wei, I can take human form? The system, no. Wei Wei Bai was angry, waving her cute little leaves. No, why did you use the most beautiful girl badge? Can't you use it in the next world? You wastrel, now you're using it on a broken flower. Even if I'm the most beautiful flower in the world, it's useless. The system, the host is always different when she's angry. Shouldn't a normal person be angry that they turn into a plant? How could a plant that could not turn into a human be a target? Dong! The sound of a bell rang in the distance. In the cold temple, in the huge meditation room behind the lotus pond, inside the yellow curtain, sunlight slanted through the wooden window of the meditation room and onto the ground. On the matted floor, a corner of a white robe was soaked in the light, and half a string of prayer beads fell on the white robe. The person holding the prayer beads, his eyes were cold and empty. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in his emotionless eyes. Is there a change in the living? He whispered to himself. His voice was like the sound of the bell, with a sense of coldness that did not belong to the mortal world. It was just a moment of emotional fluctuation, and it calmed down in the blink of an eye. There were no ripples. The Transmigration System. Prince Charming, come here. The Transmigration System. Prince Charming, come here. Transmigration System. Prince Charming, come here. The Transmigration System. Prince Charming, come here. Download the at https://m. Sashu. Com button at the bottom to record the reading record. You can see it the next time you open the bookshelf. Chapter 29:07. The host was depressed. The system felt the need to cheer her on. You're the most beautiful flower in the world. Wei Wei Bai's face was drooping. The beautiful petals were emitting a soft and beautiful light. She was expressionless. No, flowers also had expressions, but you couldn't see them. A flower. How do you want me to conquer the target? The system said, believe in yourself. You're the most powerful, the most adorable, the most beautiful, the most awesome. All the conquerors added together can't even compare to a single strand of your hair. You're a flower. You can conquer all the targets. Wei Wei Bai listened. Why did she feel so comfortable? That's right. Even if she was a flower, she was the most beautiful flower. She immediately puffed up her chest proudly. The flower stalk. Then she looked around. Where is the conqueror? Where is the conqueror? Let me use my charm to conquer him. The system silently wiped away its cold sweat. It just had to fool her. After all, the host only had to say that she was beautiful. Even if she turned into a shoe or a brick, she would still be happy. The key words to praise her were to say that she was the most beautiful, and the most adorable. No other praise could compare to that. That was why the host and its house was so easy to coax. Suddenly, a notification sounded. This mission is to obtain Ning Chen's love. Target, Ning Chen. Completion, 0. Time, to be determined. The time had been determined. The host and the system didn't feel surprised by this to be determined at all. Meanwhile, Lotus Wei started to look around. Where was the conqueror? Usually, if there was a notification, the conqueror was nearby. Her face was shaking from side to side, but she didn't see anything. The lotus pond was huge, and the water was hazy. When the water vapor filled the air, it was like being in a fairyland. She still didn't know the conqueror's information, so she asked the system, "Who is my conqueror?" The system flipped through the information. Because of the side mission's curse, more than half of the information was lost. But there was still some basic information. He sent the information to Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai felt a familiar feeling in her head, but it didn't hurt much. Maybe it was because it was difficult for the lotus to transmit pain. After reading the information, she then faintly said to the system, "You want me to conquer a monk? An eminent monk at the level of great guru." This world was different from the usual world. There were demons running amok. It was an ancient setting that resembled a fantasy. It was very similar to cultivation. However, it was of a lower level than the cultivation world, because there were no immortal cultivation sects here. Only Buddhism and Taoism maintained the peace of this plane. Moreover, he had never seen anyone who could cultivate to become an immortal. At most, they just cultivated for a longer period of time. It was just that he had taken good care of his health. The only thing that made it feel like a fantasy was that the animals and plants here could become spirits. Most of them were here to harm and eat people. Both Buddhism and Taoism had been killing such demons every day. Seeing this, Wei Wei Bai hugged herself with leaves. She felt that she had become a spirit in her current state. Moreover, the lotus pond she was in was the source of Buddhism, the most awesome 10,000 origin temple. The water vapor in this lotus pond was all spiritual energy. It could cleanse one's heart and remove all distracting thoughts. Therefore, every day, there would be monks who would come here to meditate after finishing their morning classes, to remove all distracting thoughts. And if she became a spirit in this lotus pond, the monks would probably see it and directly deal with her with an alms bowl. Wei Wei Bai felt that she should try her best not to move. Chapter 2908. She did not want to be seen by the monk. She destroyed her on the spot. She did not even see the target. She was the first one to fail. Below the information was the target's information. Ning Chun. It was said that he was abandoned at the entrance of one Yuan temple when he was born. After the abbot took him back, he became a monk in the temple at the age of 1. Because the old monk said that Ning Chun was born with a Buddhist bone. He had the potential to become a powerful person. Wei Wei Bai only had one thought when she read this. "Old monk, are you even human? You won't even let go of a child." Ning Chun grew up in the temple and was only 18 years old. When he was 15, the old monk died, and he inherited his mantle and became the abbot. He managed the entire Buddhism. After reading this, there was nothing. There was too little information except for his age, name, and a little bit of experience. There was nothing. What was going on? It was cutting corners more and more. Wei Wei Bai did not complain. The system would not deliberately trick her. Maybe it really did not provide any information. She fell into deep thought with a face full of petals. So where was she going to find Ning Chun now? What did Ning Chun look like? There was no picture in the information. And since he was the abbot, was he bald? A monk must be bald. Why would he be a monk if he was not bald? Bai Weiwei felt that the goal of the bald man strategy was a bit of a challenge to her bottom line. Normal people would not be able to control the hairstyle of a bald head, even if they could control the hairstyle of death. Their appearance would be greatly discounted. Weiwei Bai said to the system, "Can we change the target? I can't eat this bald head." The system said, "Bear with it. You're a lotus, so you don't have hair. We're all bald, so why look down on each other?" Weiwei Bai angrily reached out her leaves and touched her petals. "Isn't this hair? This is hair." The system said, "That's your faceplate." Bai Weiwei stroked the petals, stroked, and suddenly wanted to sleep. She yawned. "Call me when you see the target. I want to see what he's like." As for the strategy, she could not make a plan before seeing the target. Furthermore, now that she had turned into a flower, it would be more difficult for her to seduce others. Weiwei Bai, who was used to difficulties, closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep. The system knew why she was tired. This was because her body and identity had been destroyed by the side task. She was standing here because of the amulet, but the power of the amulet was limited. He couldn't protect her flawlessly. That was why she got tired easily. In the huge lotus pond, the lotus flowers did not seem to cluster together. Red and white lotuses were blooming on the surface of the water. Wei Wei didn't know how long she had slept when she suddenly heard the sound of water. Her lotus petals moved. She raised her head and saw countless golden dots of light dancing in the mist that filled the sky. Amidst the overflowing light, within the boundless hazy fog, you seemed to hear the sound of water getting closer and closer. Wei Wei turned her head. Did something enter the water? Just as she was about to stretch out her head to look at her roots, she saw the water ripple and the scales of light. Suddenly, she saw a thin and slender figure emerge from the mist beside her. His beautiful back muscles were taut, and his shoulder blades were raised a little because of the force bringing out a beautiful curve. He was in the water, as if he was washing himself. Water flowed down the back of his neck, and his fair skin was full of water vapor. In the mist, he gently glanced to the side. His dark eyes were empty, and the beautiful curve of his face was like a work of art that had been personally touched by God. Chapter 2909. He looked young, but his expression was as cold as 1,000-year-old snow. Bai Weiwei poked her head out to look, and the small lotus leaf also swayed forward. It was too hazy, so she could only see the side of his face. She wanted to go forward, but she found that she couldn't move. She could only stay where she was. Weiwei shook the leaf and found that she couldn't move. She could only sigh. Forget it. She would think of another way. After all, he could be a monk here. If he saw her become a spirit, he would beat her to death. But what if the target didn't come if she stayed here like this? Was there any quick-fix cultivation method in the supermarket that would allow her to become mobile in an instant? She couldn't become a human, but it was fine as long as she could move. She felt that her charm was like a flower, and she could get some favorability points. After all, she was a flower in this world. That Ningchen couldn't have a grudge against her, right? No grudges, no grudges. To her, this was the easiest way. It would be troublesome if she encountered a hell dungeon that involved killing the whole family. Just as Weiwei was standing still and planning to pretend to be a quiet lotus, she saw that the young man in the water had calmly lowered his eyes and then walked up step by step. Yes, he walked up step by step from the water. The water seemed to have turned into stairs. A strange fragrance came from afar. It was cold and faint. Countless budding lotus flowers began to bloom. The young man finally stepped on the water. The water was sparkling, reflecting his beautiful body. There was a light red cinnabar between his white and holy eyebrows. His short hair was soaked in water, sticking to his white forehead. The ends of his eyes were slightly long, and the water droplets slid from the corner of his eyebrows to his delicate chin, and then fell into the water. Weiwei also felt that her face was starting to heat up. An ancient and distant Zen sound came to her ears. As if attracted by something, her mind started to go blank. All distracting thoughts disappeared. It was as if in an instant the world was empty, and she only wanted to bloom. She shook her leaves, and the cute petals shook as well. Finally, she suppressed the urge to blossom, and she couldn't bloom. Her flowers had bloomed. If they continued to bloom, they would wither. She curiously hid behind a large leaf and carefully glanced at that person. Then, he heard a familiar notification sound. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 0. Bai Weiwei immediately reacted. Attack the target, BA. He was Ning Chun, the unlucky one who became a monk at the age of 1. In her opinion, Ning Chun was a typical example of someone who was forced to become a monk. The young man stood between the red and white lotuses. His naked body was faintly discernible in the mist. He was astonishingly beautiful. He tilted his body slightly and raised his hand. A white monk's robe fell into his hand. There were faint golden light patterns on the robe. They were actually scriptures. The young man put on his monk robe with one hand and walked barefoot to the side of the pond. The string of black sandalwood beads flew to his wrist as if they were alive. There was a golden tassel at the end of the beads. They were floating in the air. When he reached the edge of the pool, the mist dispersed and a golden light appeared. The youth's beautiful and pure face was as calm as jade under the sun. He seemed to have sensed something. The ends of his eyes twitched slightly. His gaze was empty as he turned to look at the pond. Among the large lotus leaves, a small lotus gently poked its head out. It used its small leaves to touch the big leaves, as if it wanted to tiptoe, to look at him. However, it found that its roots were stuck and it couldn't come over. The little lotus lowered its head, looking a little dejected. Slash. Chapter 29:10. The young man's cold eyes still did not show any emotion. He just calmly pulled his robe tight, then turned around and left without hesitation. Golden light opened up a path. White flowers bloomed. Spiritual energy boiled. This was the sign that the Buddha bone had just formed, a sign of a powerful being. Wherever he went, the living beings there, no matter what kind of plants they were, would feel happy and welcome him in full bloom. The little lotus flower, no, Bai Weiwei watched as the target of the attack left. She could not chase after him. The system suddenly said, "The target is here? The monk you want to capture." He followed suit and slept as well. But he overslept. Weiwei Bai said, "Why does he still have hair? Although it's a bit short, don't monks have gradients?" The system said, "Shaving, but the male lead has been in isolation for a few months. Plus, his body is full of vitality, so his hair grew back." Weiwei Bai understood. Then after he takes a bath, is he going to shave his hair again? The system said, "Let me see. I can't see." Weiwei Bai. Suddenly, she wondered if Tong Zi was getting more and more comfortable, causing him to become more and more like a rice bucket. Weiwei Bai thought that it was quite good. Eat more, his body is great. She was happy to spoil him. The bell rang, and all the monks were suddenly happy. Masters out of isolation. Prepare the razor. His hair must have grown back. The little monk immediately ran to get water and a full set of razor tools. A few monks also immediately sprinkled water to clean the road. Countless planted flowers also bloomed ahead of time. The sound of the temple was distant, and the sound of the bell was long. Some of the older monks were already holding lotuses, walking out in a crowd. The young man walking in front of them had a calm expression, but his eyes were cold. The cinnabar between his eyebrows was stunning, but did not detract from his peaceful elegance. The oldest monk, whose face was full of wrinkles, was holding a bunch of lotuses, soaking himself, unwilling to let his filthy breath touch the young man in front of him. "Masters Junior, do you want to shave your hair first, or—" The young man looked sideways, his delicate face expressionless. He said calmly, "Let's subdue the demon." This isolation was to break through the bottleneck. He caught a nightmare demon. Nightmares were born from the filthy desires of the human heart. They fed on countless evil desires, nourished themselves, and then devoured the human heart. How many people had died in its hands? After imprisoning the nightmare lord in the demon's subduing tower, he did not destroy it. Because the nightmare lord's ability was too strong, he recklessly went over. It might allow the nightmare lord to escape. Nightmares devour one's heart, because one has a heart, thoughts, and desires. Before he went into seclusion, there was still a trace of grief from his master's death in the depths of his heart. This trace of grief was very faint, but it was still a flaw in the human heart. After spending a few months in secluded meditation, he finally managed to plug this loophole. He raised his finger, and the black sandalwood bead floated up and surrounded the youth. "You guys guard the outside. I will enter the pagoda." After he finished speaking, the young man stepped forward leisurely. A bell rang in the demon subduing tower. The little lotus Weiwei stood in the water with a blank expression. You can't walk, you can't run, you can't come into contact with your target. Ah, so boring. Even SpongeBob SquarePants and little tadpoles looking for their mother couldn't make her happy. The system was repairing the game console. It was said that once it was repaired, it could play with the host. I'm looking forward to it. Weiwei Bai was drowsy and was about to yawn. Suddenly, she heard the sound of water. She raised her face and looked at the plate, only to see a golden light that filled the sky. The beautiful youth stood in the water again. Blood flowed past his fair skin. It was as if it was full of incomparably beautiful patterns. It wasn't his blood. Perhaps it was the blood of other demons. After all, The target of the strategy was a demon subduer. Wei Wei Bai was about to try to move her body when she suddenly saw the youth in front of her lift his eyes slightly. His skin was as cold as snow, and his thin lips were slightly opened. Have you become a demon? Slash. Forward slash forward slash. Chapter 29:11. It had become a spirit. The spirit here would be beaten to death. Wei Wei Bai felt that she had to pretend to be unconscious, so she quietly shrunk back and hid in the leaves. Then she looked up and pretended to be a sunflower. No, a lotus. The small lotus was slender and beautiful. Her whole body was glowing, and the petals were soft and pink. The green leaves quietly clung to a large lotus leaf, as if trying to hide, trying to let people know that it had not become a spirit. The lotus here was abnormally large because of the spiritual influence. It was also the only one that was malnourished. Was it a lotus spirit that failed the tribulation? Was that why it was so weak, because it was beaten back to its original form? It was almost impossible to feel the power in the lotus. Ning Chun looked down calmly. His eyes were quiet and deep. His beautiful shoulders were on the bed, and his short and black hair was dragged in the water, sticking to his white forehead. There was a violent, dark power in his body. It was activated by the nightmare when he was subduing the demon. He was born with a Buddhist bone. As usual, he had no distracting thoughts or desires. But the old monk said that because he was too pure, it was easy to be touched by the dark aura. After soaking in the water for a while, he looked up at the lotus spirit. The small lotus seemed to tremble and then shrunk back behind the large leaves. The small petals turned away in an unusually delicate manner. It did not look at him, as if it could prevent itself from being discovered by him. His eyes were cold, and his eyelashes drooped, suddenly sinking slowly. The system said, "You've been exposed." Wei Wei Bai, didn't I not move? She really did think that she did not move. The system, she forgot that the lotus was not her original body, so it did not fit well. She thought that she did not move. If she was a human, she would not move much. But the lotus body could not be controlled, and it would reveal its own thoughts. For example, if she felt that she should hide, the lotus would automatically show the action of hiding. The system suddenly sensed something and reminded, he's here. Bai Weiwei immediately didn't move. Her chubby, round face immediately looked up. With a splash, the young man emerged from the water. The water vapor touched the young man's slender eyelashes. His eyes were cold and indifferent, without a trace of emotion. His beautiful and clean face was incomparably calm. Ning Chen lowered his eyes and raised his hand. A few transparent drops of water fell from his white fingertips. At the same time, a destructive force appeared on his finger. The golden Buddhist light enveloped the little lotus flower. Demons can't control themselves. Although you haven't harmed anyone, the process of forming will definitely absorb the spiritual energy of humans and create a sin of killing. When the time comes, you won't be able to escape the punishment of the heavenly Tao. You can only sever all your life force. Without the accumulation of good fortune, you won't be able to reincarnate. The young man's voice was flat and cold. It was pleasing to the ear, but it couldn't arouse any evil thoughts. On the contrary, if one listened to him for a long time, they would feel that their minds were empty and that everything he said was right. The little lotus flower was suppressed by his words. Before it could resist, the light of Buddha had already fallen on it. She shook her head. He seemed to be a little uncomfortable. Ning Chung remained indifferent. His fingernails accidentally slid across its petals. The petals were unusually glossy, and when he touched them, it felt as if something had brushed past his fingertips. His eyes were still. There was no reaction. Suddenly, his finger was wrapped by a slightly cold leaf. The little lotus flower intimately moved its petals closer and rubbed against his finger. The golden light had no effect on it. Quick transmigration system. Male God, come here. Chapter 29:12. Its voice was tender and cute like child. Monk, don't kill me. I didn't hurt anyone, and I won't hurt anyone in the future. Don't kill me for no reason. You'll create an unnecessary sin, and the heavenly axiom won't let you go. Is a little girl? Its voice was so delicate. Ningchen looked at it silently. Or maybe it was her. Then he moved his fingers. The leaves were still hugging him, and the petals were still lowering their heads, falling into his palm. It was intimate and coquettish. Don't kill me, monk. I'll sing for you, okay? Ningchen's eyebrows were bright red. He didn't say anything and just pulled back his fingers. Then he turned around and walked towards the water. Countless lotus leaves swarmed over. These plant creatures had no consciousness, but they were unusually obedient to him. The little lotus was still standing in the same place, unable to come over. It could only cross its two leaves in front of its chest, eager but unable to move. Ning Chun was indifferent, standing naked among the lotus leaves. The young man's half-exposed body was so beautiful that it was like the most beautiful creation in the world. He raised his hand, and the white monk's robe with golden patterns fell into his hand. The black sandalwood beads also floated to his side, surrounding him. Ningchen didn't say anything. He put on the robe and walked forward. He didn't look back at the little lotus. He didn't try to destroy it again. Wei Wei Bai proudly raised its leaves. Look, even if I'm a flower that can topple countries, he didn't kill me. The system said, he killed you, but he couldn't kill you. The light of Buddha was only effective against fairies. Was Wei Wei Bai a fairy? She was a human soul, and the lotus was just an ordinary lotus. Of course, she used the badge of the world's most beautiful woman, which was the most beautiful lotus. It was even a lotus. If the opponent used the exorcist wand, she would hit it directly. The lotus would rot, and of course it would die. But the male protagonist was a pretentious prick and insisted on using spiritual energy to kill the fairy. If you don't have a seductress, do you want a bar spirit? Wei Wei Bai stroked her petal chin with a leaf. After thinking deeply, she said, it seems that he is a monk who likes to kill demons. He probably thinks that I am a difficult demon spirit to deal with. It is not easy to capture this kind of monk. However, there was no notification from the favorability index just now. This meant that it was still 0. In other words, he wasn't hated. She wasn't loved either. After all, he was a monk and had been a monk for so many years. Sitting on the praying mat every day in a daze, the more he thought, the more his brain would become dull and his emotions would become mentally retarded. In other words, it was the legendary saying that all 4 elements were empty. What else could he do? In a place like a temple, one could not even eat meat. He was so hungry that his stomach was empty. Wei Wei Bai held her plate and looked at the water. I suddenly realized that my petals look even better. It was not an illusion. After all, they were using badges. That would cost his HP. The only thing that made her willing to give up her life points was the badge. The system didn't buy it for her every day. She bought it and used it. Even if she was a toad, she felt that after spending this amount of life points, she would become a delicate toad. After Wei Wei Bai admired her face, she still struggled to move her body. Sure enough, she still couldn't move. How could she capture him like this? At least she had to run to the monk's meditation room to make her presence felt. Without a presence, could the monk come to take a bath every day? She couldn't cultivate feelings. The system suddenly said, the game link is fixed, come and play. Wei Wei Bai immediately said excitedly, okay, how do I play? Fast crossing system. Prince Charming, come over here. 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 Fast crossing system. Prince Charming, come over here, comma. Chapter 29:13. Once the game was linked, Wei Wei Bai saw the game screen and the virtual keyboard. She immediately swayed her body and began to play the game with the system in the simulation. Why is it Super Mario? It's broken. I haven't downloaded a new game for a long time. New games require health points. Super Mario is fun too, and it was a mutated system Super Mario. It could allow many people to play together and cross-dress together. The mushrooms were much bigger. The system's modified Super Mario had much better graphics. Wei Wei Bai thought, it's fun. The next day, the The sound of bells came from afar. The sound of Zen also began to resound in the temple. The system said, "It's a meeting at the Wan Yuan temple. The male lead is preaching Zen to them." Wei Weibai was not interested. She casually asked while playing the game, "What Zen is he talking about?" The system said, "I can't hear clearly," because the place where the male lead was could automatically block the system's prying eyes. So it could not see clearly everything around the male lead. Wei Weibai said casually, "Forget it. Anyway, monks are bored. There's nothing to collect." The system nodded. "Let's play the game." Wei Weibai said, "Okay, I got gold coins again." After the game was modified, there were very few gold coins. It was rare to get a few gold coins, and it felt like winning the lottery. The host and the system. They had become two salted fish that could not turn over. They only thought about playing the game every day. There was no pressure from the strategy time, and there were so many planes to train. They had already trained to have a diamond mentality. Strategy? Oh, forget it, forget it. Let's play the game. Favorability? Oh, the game is so fun. Just as Wei Weibai and the system were happily eating and waiting for death. Suddenly, a side mission notification sounded. Ding! The irregular side mission has been activated. From now on, any mission can be activated at any time, anywhere. Side mission note. Friendly reminder. 004. Eat your grandpa's beep. I want to beep your beep remarks are not in line with the rules and will be blocked. Wei Weibai's ears perked up when she heard the notification. However, the game was still on. She saw a huge gold coin and was about to rush over to eat it. Just as he was about to eat it, he suddenly stopped. Suddenly, he heard the announcement of a mission. Please dance a beautiful dance in front of the male lead. The way you dance will make the male lead like you even more. Completion date, today. Wei Weibai, ? What kind of mission was this? This side quest was too easy. Wasn't it just dancing? Moreover, there was no specific type of dance. She just twisted her waist and swayed her hips and said that she was dancing the rainbow feathers. The mission could be considered completed, so she continued to play games with the system. As she played, she realized that she didn't hear the punishment for the mission. The previous world was very friendly. That was why she didn't suspect anything when the notification sounded so friendly. As for the note, wasn't that for the system? They were all blocked. Could it be that the little bitch had developed feelings for the system beyond friendship? The remarks were all unsightly and indecent words. That was why it was blocked. No wonder the side quest was so good to her. It turned out that it fell in love with her loser system. Wei Weibai asked calmly, "What are the consequences of failure?" If it really fell in love, there definitely wouldn't be any punishment for failure. Punishment? The system will eat shit with the host, live broadcast to the entire universe. Eat 3 tons of shit. Wei Weibai system / Chapter 29:14. Wei Weibai finally reacted, so it's not disfigurement. Very good. The system said, "Eating shit seems to be scarier than disfigurement." Wei Weibai said, "No, disfigurement is scarier. But I can't live stream eating shit." The system was relieved. The host knew the severity of the situation. Wei Weibai said, "I'm so beautiful. If I live stream it, my image will be ruined." This is also one of the ways to disfigurement. After all, no matter how beautiful she was, eating shit, she could even live stream it. In the future, those who watched the live stream, ghosts, aliens, whenever they saw her, they would think that she had eaten shit. That beauty was not as disgusting as shit. The system said, "You mean it's okay in private?" Wei Weibai said, "Am I the kind of person who eats shit?" The system said, "Then choose between disfigurement and eating shit." Wei Weibai, the system, okay, he should not have overestimated the host's bottom line. For beauty, she had no bottom line. In the main hall, the sound of Sanskrit lingered and the fragrance of lotus flowers filled the air. Countless monks lowered their heads and sat on the floor with their legs crossed devoutly, listening to the young man's lecture. Wan Yuan Temple was the origin of Buddhism and Taoism. It was also the place where all the monks learned from. Taoists often came here to learn about Taoism from Wan Yuan Temple. That was because there were many ancient books in Wan Yuan Temple. including Taoism. The young man sitting on the futon reached out his white fingertips and closed the book in front of him. His beautiful eyes were emotionless, and his face was calm and holy. It was as if looking at him would blaspheme him. He wore a white monk's robe with golden patterns, and around his delicate wrist were prayer beads that seemed to have no gravity. His black tail was made of sandalwood beads, and his golden tassel was tied with white Bodhi beads. His voice was distant. Today's gathering ends here. All the monks lowered their heads and bowed respectfully with their palms together. Ning Chun stood up, and the prayer beads floated on his wrist, swaying as he walked. The young man's back was straight, and every step he took made the living beings happy. Countless plants grew vigorously again. Countless flowers bloomed and withered, just to spread the petals under his feet and kiss his footprints. Several young monks lowered their heads. "Martial uncle, do you want to cut your hair?" After going into seclusion, Ning Chen's hair had already grown out. The longest strand of hair was sticking to his neck. Ning Chen's face was expressionless. His voice was calm. "Let me wash my incense first." To him, there was not much difference between hair loss and not hair loss. Arriving at the edge of the lotus pond, countless lotuses bloomed amidst the mist. He looked up and saw a slender and beautiful lotus taking a nap beside the huge lotus leaf. She hung her flower neck, the petals were half closed, and the leaves were gathered in front of the flower stem. Ning Chun lifted his finger, and a golden Buddha light floated above it. He lowered his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then, he retracted his fingers, as if there was something he couldn't understand. The Buddha's light had no effect on the lotus. He stepped onto the water and walked forward step by step. The little lotus suddenly woke up. She shook her leaves and lifted her petals. Her childish voice was filled with joy. "Monk, you're here. I was just practicing a dance. Can I show you?" The young man called Monk paused, and ripples of sleep spread out under his feet. He remained expressionless. After a moment of silence, he calmly said, "You don't have feet. So how could she dance?" Wei Wei Bai put her hands on her hips. "You monk, you're really not pure." Chapter 29:15. The Zero. 5 favorability made the host even more Buddhist. The side quests were easily completed as if it was just a game. After all, the person who conquered this plane was a monk. If you were not Buddhist, he would think that you had nothing in common with him and ignore you. After Wei Wei Bai finished playing the game, she went to sleep in a daze. After sleeping, she asked the system to buy her a cheap cultivation badge to absorb spirit energy. The system said, "I don't think it's useful." Wei Wei Bai said, "How do you know it's useless if you haven't used it?" The system said, "You're just looking for something to do." Wei Wei Bai said, "Yes, isn't this boring?" Boredom had reached a new level in this plane. She had no legs and could not run, so she stayed in the pool every day to train her endurance. If this continued, she would be completely empty. Moreover, the temple held a Dharma assembly every day, chanted scriptures every day, and rang the bell every day. She was brainwashed to become a nun. Moreover, the monk did not come every day. Sometimes he would sit by the pool and rest with his eyes closed. Sometimes he would come and take a bath. Most of the time, he was nowhere to be seen. Lotus Wei held a beautiful faceplate. I'm so beautiful. Why doesn't anyone come to admire me?" System. The host has successfully hypnotized herself as the most beautiful flower in the world, intoxicated by her own face every day. She could also absorb spirit energy. Of course, she could not absorb any spirit energy. The lotus was not a spirit. She was just a normal lotus. She did not have any talent in absorbing spirit energy. Wei Wei Bai was still shaking her body, trying to absorb a bit. The most important problem was right now. It was too difficult to conquer a lotus. If the stingy monk suddenly liked to go somewhere else to take a bath, she could only conquer him from afar. Even if she could make eyes at him from afar, she had to see if the target who was about to go bald could see it. Wei Wei Bai stretched out a leaf to support the petals. "If you can turn into a human product, remember to get one for me." The system said, "It's hard to find a suitable product." Her situation was that she lacked an identity. The plane world needed a legitimate identity. There was only one in every plane. It was ruined by that little bitch. Even if he gave her a new body, the identity would not be Wei Wei Bai. The body would not be able to withstand the destruction. Wei Wei Bai asked, really? She had always thought that the things in the supermarket were awesome. He might not have it today, but he might have it tomorrow. The system flipped through the list of products on the shelves of the supermarket. Well, even if there is a time limit. For example, a sticker with 50 HP can only last for 30 minutes. In fact, it was more than 30 minutes. If Wei Wei Bai's original body was that of a lotus spirit, this thing could allow her to take human form for a month before she could cultivate it. But now, when used on the host, it would be difficult for the host to last 30 minutes. The heavenly Tao rules in this plane were stricter than those in other planes. If a foreign soul like the host is discovered, and it is a soul from another world that does not have the body of a legal attacker, he would be targeted. At that time, the host would be in trouble no matter what he did. At the end of your bad luck, the heavenly Tao might find you an eyesore and let your soul scatter. Wei Wei Bai held the flower face with her leaves and fell into deep thought. 30 minutes, 50 HP, the system said. I think it's better not to buy it. It's not worth it. And there was the danger of being targeted by the heavenly Tao. It was really not worth it. Download the at https://m. Sashu. Com. Chapter 29:16. Wei Wei Bai fell into deep thought. Suddenly, I'm turning into a human. Does the world's most beautiful woman badge work? The system replied, yes, this badge affects the soul. It will follow you wherever you put your soul. Why else would it be so expensive? All right, how much life points does a badge have? He no longer looked at the price when he bought things. He had enough to eat and drink and was no longer in debt. He had taken all the consequences of being a good person. Now, his reputation had turned into a new one. It was all good. Therefore, even if buying things did not have life points, he could still get a loan. For a super system like him, if his reputation was good, he could get a sizable amount of life points. The system felt that it had returned to its normal spending level. Of course, it would be hard to meet good people in the future, so it would still look at the price when it was ridiculously expensive. Wei Wei Bai looked up at the flower petals with an expectant look. Then buy it. Isn't this for the strategy? The system was speechless. Then it recalled what the host said and understood. Turning into a human would allow the host to see the face of the world's most beautiful woman. The host would be willing to spend even 500. The system bought a human transformation sticker and pasted it on the lotus flower. Wei Wei Bai shook the flower petals, and her body began to emit a faint white light. She extended her leaves, and the green leaves turned into fingers in the white light. His fingertips were tender and pink. She looked curiously and found that her flower stem had turned into a body, and the petals turned into clothes. When she returned to her human form, she was already standing on the lake. The water was under her feet, but she could still float. The system said, because you're still a lotus flower, you're very light, so you won't sink when you land on the water. Wei Wei Bai looked down and saw that her hair was messy, and a few lotus flower buds were blooming beside her ears. She reached out her finger and touched the buds. It was a real flower. The system said, don't break it. This is a part of your body. Don't forget that you're a flower now. Wei Wei Bai nodded, and the little bud in her hair swayed. Her clothes were very revealing. The petals wrapped around her waist like a short skirt, and a green leaf wrapped around her upper body. Her shoulders were bare, and her fair shoulders were as white as lotus roots. She immediately ran forward barefooted. Where is the monk? The system said, let me see. Maybe meditating in the meditation room. It was purely a guess based on the information. After all, she couldn't see the male lead surroundings. No matter what he did, it was hard to see it anywhere. Wei Wei Bai immediately ran over happily. We have to seize every second to conquer it. The system asked, how do you want to do that? Wei Wei Bai said, let's just force ourselves on him. Anyway, this monk is so pure. I don't think he has ever touched a beautiful woman. I have the most beautiful appearance in the world. Everyone loves me. the less one has experienced love. He had never seen a woman before. The harder it was for him to control himself. The system glanced at Wei Wei Bai. There were some things it wanted to say, but it felt that it was better to let its host be happy for a while. After a while, Wei Wei Bai struggled to climb up the leaves of a Boston creeper towards the window. With her small hands and feet, the leaves of the Boston creeper could be used as a blanket for her. No wonder she ran on the water for so long. She thought that there was some kind of trap in the water that made her break her legs. She finally climbed to the edge of the window. Her small body stood at the edge of the window. Looking down, she felt like she was standing on a 10-story building. Download the at https://m Sashu. Com button at the bottom to record the reading record. Chapter 29:17. She exhaled lightly. Even if she turned small, she would still be the most beautiful woman in the world. She would still be loved by everyone. Wei Wei Bai turned back to look at the meditation room through the window and saw a room that was very big for her now. A smoker was placed there, but nothing was lit. The meditation room was empty. There was no Buddha statue or anything. There was only a futon on the ground. Where was the monk? Further away was the bed covered by a light yellow gauze curtain. The system also followed to take a look, meditating on the bed. Wei Wei Bai immediately lowered her head and stretched out her short arms. Because she was very light, she directly jumped down from the window sill. Her light body stepped on air, softly, pa. She fell to the ground. Being able to walk on water did not mean that she could fly in the air. She got up from the ground with a dirty face. Then she immediately reached out to touch her face. After making sure that her face was fine, she ran forward with her short arms and legs. She ran under the big table for a while before running out of the table. Then she ran along the long wall and finally ran to the bed. This bed was too high. Wei Wei Bai put her hands on her waist and looked up with effort. She saw a corner of a white robe hanging down on the bed. Golden light patterns were faintly discernible on the robe. She stretched out her hand and then jumped up, grabbing the corner of the robe and climbing at night. It was not easy to climb up. She saw that she had climbed to the middle of the robe where the monk was sitting cross-legged. She looked strangely at the young man who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. His beautiful eyebrows were delicate and holy. Only the cinnabar between his eyebrows was shockingly gorgeous. Her body was as small as a palm. It was said that the sticker effect could not be used too much. It could only support such a small body. Wei Wei Bai felt that she should ask the supermarket for a refund. After all, wasn't this a shoddy product? She stared at the young man who had his eyes closed and realized that he did not seem to notice her arrival. Could it be that she was too small? Wei Wei Bai strangely put one hand in front of her chest and the other hand on her arm. She touched her chin with her fingers and looked like she was in deep thought. The monk suddenly frowned. The sandalwood beads surrounding him also floated up as if they were resisting something. A black aura appeared around his white aura. It seemed to be emanating from his body. Wei Wei Bai, what? Don't monks bathe every day? Why are you covered in smog? The system replied, it absorbed bad resentment and couldn't get rid of it, so it's emitting black gas. The little Wei Wei Bai tilted her head and thought for a while. Then, she extended her delicate fingertips and touched the black gas in the air. The black gas immediately coiled around her finger and then disappeared. Wei Wei Bai asked, the smog is affecting me? The system said, you're the lotus in the spirit pool. You're born with the ability to purify. If you want to absorb a large amount of black gas, all you have to do is touch the male lead's forehead. The black gas condensed in one's spiritual altar. It was such a huge pool with so much spirit chi. The reason why so many lotus flowers were raised was to purify the dark energy. The lotus itself was the best plant for purifying bad energy. Wei Wei Bai shook her finger and said, all right, I'll save the monk and see if I can get 1 or 2 points. This short-haired bald donkey was so stingy that it only increased the favorability by that little bit. It was better not to increase it, or else it would be disgusting. But then again, he was forced to become a monk since birth and had not seen much. He also meditated every day, so his brain was probably not working well. The Chapter 29:18. It was still understandable that 05 was the case. Bai Weiwei climbed up his clothes and with great difficulty hooked her fingers around his collar. The black sandalwood beads seemed to have felt something. They came over and touched Weiwei Bai affectionately. However, the beads were too heavy and knocked her down. Before she fell, she quickly hugged one of the beads with both hands. The beads floated in the air. The little Weiwei Bai swayed and finally followed the beads to Ning Chen's forehead. But she couldn't touch it. If I touch his forehead, I can purify his black energy? The system said, in theory, yes. Weiwei Bai nodded and immediately took a deep breath. She held the beads and swung for a while. Then she flew out. Her hands touched the red cinnabar mark on Ning Chen's forehead. She touched it with her fingertips and burned her hand. The cinnabar caught fire and almost burned her skin. After she touched his forehead, the black energy seemed to have felt something and rushed over. Countless black energy poured out his body, all rushed into her fingertips. Weiwei Bai suddenly felt uncomfortable and her face began to pale. The system quickly said, "Your purification power is limited. Let go of your hand and stop purifying." Weiwei Bai said, "I want to let go, but the black energy is sticky." It stuck to her. She was small and light. She didn't even have a chance to escape. The spiritual energy of a lotus was consumed bit by bit. Weiwei Bai felt that she couldn't die like this. She immediately reached out her finger and patted his cinnabar, saying loudly, "Monk, wake up. You're making me uncomfortable." Ningchen walked in an empty city. There were rotting corpses everywhere. Vultures circled in the sky. Countless resentful spirits were crying and howling. The remnant thoughts of the Nightmare Lord turned into a terrifying black shadow. It wrapped around his body. "Little bald donkey, do you think you can destroy me? I don't believe that you have no cracks in your heart. There are countless resentful spirits in this world. You think about crossing the river every day. Can you do it?" The Nightmare Lord finished speaking. Under the countless corpses, water gushed out, forming a great river of dried bones. Meanwhile, withered bones had turned into a human who was desperately shouting, "Save me! Save me! Please save me, holy monk." Ning Chan stood in the middle of the river. Below him were countless hands that were begging for help. Those fingers were like withered trees, like demonic claws. She tugged at his clothes desperately, trying to pull him over. As long as there was the slightest change in his heart, he would be lost in the world of the nightmare's remnant thoughts. Ningchen looked down indifferently and said in an indifferent voice, "Dissipate properly. It's useless to hover around me like this." Although the Nightmare Lord had been destroyed by him, however, a trace of remnant thoughts remained in his heart. His Buddhist bones were too clean. That was why the darkness could be tainted. If he didn't clean it up in time, it would turn into a terrifying darkness and accumulate in his body. The incubus moved closer to his holy face and laughed strangely. "You can't even save yourself. Who else can you save, you stinky bald donkey?" Ningchen looked up at the darkness in the sky. He knew that the power of the Nightmare Lord was not that great. This was actually his dark world. The dark aura that couldn't be expelled had condensed into this hell. Suddenly, he felt his feet sink. It was those fingers that were pulling at his clothes. He frowned. Just as he was about to be pulled down, a clear spiritual aura suddenly dissipated the darkness in the sky. He looked up and immediately had the strength to pull away the countless hands and leap up. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes. He saw a small pink body falling from between his brows. He suddenly raised his hand and opened his palm. What fell lightly into his palm was a small flower demon. She quietly curled up in his hand. Her cute pink face revealed a painful expression. Her beautiful toes were also trembling. This was the little lotus spirit in the pool. Was she the one who purified his dark aura just now? Ning Chun pursed his thin lips and was about to move. However, he saw that in his palm, the little flower demon had turned into a slender and beautiful lotus flower. The color of the lotus flower was sickly, not as bright as usual. The lotus flower couldn't leave the water. He held the lotus flower and instantly came to the pool. Stepping on the water surface, he put her back to the place where her roots were. Seeing that she was quietly standing on the water surface again, the lotus flower bud was closed, and the leaves were listless. The youth calmly stood in place, not moving. After a long time, the favorability prompt sounded. Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 3, comma. Chapter 29:19. Wei Wei Bai stared at the 3 favorability and finally scoffed. My beauty didn't move his heart? The system immediately added the dog head to save its life. Maybe he didn't see it clearly. It could not say that the host's appearance was not good enough. Compared to her crazy and unscrupulous super awesome conquering ability, it could not be said that the host's appearance was not good enough. She was more inclined to say that her beauty moved the hearts of all conquerors, not because of her abilities. Saying that she was strong was belittling the effect of her beauty. Belittling her beauty, she would start to feel depressed again. Wei Wei Bai heard. Didn't I fall into his hands? Why didn't he see it clearly? Is this bald donkey highly myopic? The system said, You're too petite, and you're still lying on your side. Just as he was about to look, you turned back into a lotus. Wei Wei Bai said, Don't you have a sticker for me to become bigger? The system said, Only your lotus can become bigger. Wei Wei Bai said, Then forget it. She used a leaf to touch her lotus-like face. Originally, I worked so hard to climb into the monk's meditation room, hoping to find a mirror to look at my beautiful face. In the end, I couldn't find one. I don't even know what kind of beauty I have. The system was speechless. No wonder the host ran so hard and climbed the window like Spider-Man. It was to find a mirror. Was it not for conquering the target? Wei Wei Bai suddenly turned her head and looked at the bridge on the other side of the pond with her cute petal-like face. There was an opening under the bridge, and a monk was standing on the bridge. The beautiful young man's hair was still short, and he did not shave it. He was still wearing a white monk's robe, and the black prayer beads were wrapped around his white wrist, while the rest of the prayer beads were floating in the air like living creatures. His eyes were dark and clear, and his expression was cold and holy. The little lotus fairy shook her leaf happily, tilting her body and shouting at the bridge, Monk, are you feeling better? Do you still feel uncomfortable? Do you want me to help you purify again? Ningchen looked at her indifferently and was silent for a long time. He suddenly jumped off the long bridge and raised his wide sleeves. The prayer beads floated behind him. He walked to the front of the lotus and saw that the little lotus was looking up at him. Its 2 green leaves were trying hard to stick to each other, as if it felt that it was very cute. Still a child? Ningchen looked at her indifferently for a while and said in a clear voice, The demonic Buddha sect is gathering for the exquisite feast. Come with me. The little lotus tilted her head and asked, What is the exquisite feast? And I can't leave. The young man stretched out his finger and came to the front of the flower. His delicate face was incomparably calm. You can shrink and follow me. The little lotus seemed to be puzzled for a moment before saying, I can't change into a monk. That requires strength. I don't have any strength left. There was no power left. Was he being purified? The young man's fingers paused, but he didn't retract them. He lowered his beautiful eyelashes and suddenly opened his thin lips. I'll lend it to you. The little lotus asked strangely, Why did you lend it to me? Why do you want to go with me? The young man was speechless for a moment. His expression didn't change. After a while, he said calmly, Because you can purify. There are too many guests at the exquisite feast. You can block off those impure breaths. I'll borrow your purifying power to help me on my way. The little lotus obediently looked up and was quiet for a moment. Suddenly, she swayed her leaves gently and touched his fingertips. The young man's fingertips didn't move and maintained the same posture. The little lotus fairy said softly, Monk, you have to protect me well. I'm still young. The. Chapter 29:20. The young man's skin was as white as snow, and his face was calm. He lowered his eyelashes, and power flowed out of his fingertips. A golden light covered the sky. The little lotus turned into a little girl and jumped into his palm. She looked up at him and asked with a smile, "Monk, am I beautiful when I turn into a human?" The young man stood up straight and his robe was raised. He looked at her expressionlessly for a while. His voice was calm. "Appearances are just illusions. Don't worry too much." After he finished speaking, he summoned the prayer beads. The prayer beads floated to his feet and turned into a golden robe. He stepped on it. The robe rose into the air. The little lotus fairy sat in his palm and looked at him curiously. The young man lowered his eyes. His gaze was still as he gently closed his palms. "You're too young. Don't look outside. You'll be blown away by the wind." Wei Wei Bai sat cross-legged in his palm and supported her chin with both hands. She smiled and said, "Monk, what's the use of Ling Long? Your ability should be able to purify most of the dark aura. Why do you need me?" Ning Chun lowered his head and looked at her silently for a while. Then he said, "I need to guard my heart. I'm going to do something that violates the rules." The little lotus fairy waved her hand indifferently. There was a small lotus leaf green bracelet on her wrist. "Sai, what's wrong with that? The rules are meant to be broken. You want to purify yourself by breaking the rules? You're too fragile." The young man pursed his lips and was expressionless. Finally, his calm voice had a slight fluctuation. "You're open-minded. All demons are like you. That's why they eat people and harm people. They ignore all the rules of the world and run amok. You're just one of them." The little lotus fairy immediately jumped up. "Monk, what are you talking about? When did I eat people and harm people? If I really ate people, would I be able to purify you? You ungrateful, wretched monk. I saved you, and you're framing me like this?" In the distance, there were thin clouds, and a palace that seemed to come out of nowhere appeared on the peak of a mountain. Ning Chen's eyes were distant. The wind blew, and his robe floated lightly. He heard the little lotus fairy's angry question. He was silent for a while before his voice softened. "I've wronged you. You haven't started harming people yet." The little lotus sprite started to stomp her feet again. She said unhappily in a loud voice, "You bald donkey, who's harming people? Does that mean I'll definitely harm people in the future?" The young man's face was expressionless, but it wasn't the same as before. Instead, there was a hint of helplessness. "So you are this noisy." With that, he raised his hand and gently placed her on his shoulder. "Sit here and hold on to your clothes. Don't let them fall off." The Taoist robe descended, and he had already stepped onto the peak of the mountain. More than 10 servants came to welcome him. Some of them were carrying lotus flowers. Some of them were carrying water basins for washing their hands, and some of them were respectfully leading the way. "Great Master Ning Chun, the banquet has begun. The exquisite sect leader is waiting for you. Your seat is still arranged in the main seat." The young man didn't react at all. He gently raised his finger, and on his fingertip that was so beautiful that it seemed to be carved from jade, golden light floated, and countless flowers and plants bloomed one after another. He stepped onto the flower path, his voice cold. "I will go myself. There's no need to follow me." Although he said that there was no need, the servants in gorgeous clothes followed him. Ning Chun was indifferent, his face calm. When he walked through the door, there was an illusion array under his feet. Countless floating clouds lingered under his feet. Under the floating clouds was a transparent water surface, and countless koi fish surrounded the guests. To facilitate your next reading, you can click on the Chapter 29-21. When people stepped into it, it was as if they were stepping on solid ground. The floating clouds on the surface of the water were just an illusion of the array. So the place they stepped on was still solid ground. The hall was spacious, and the illusion of beautiful scenery could be seen. There were pavilions, small bridges, flowing water, high mountains, and flying cranes. It was boundless. Not far away, 3,000 peach trees were in full bloom, and peach petals were floating in the air. In the peach forest, there were countless seats set up separately. Some people were drinking, they were Taoist guests. Some people were playing chess, they were rogue cultivators of the world. Some people were writing poems, they were emperors of the world. The exquisite banquet had been held for 10 years. Demons could come, Taoists could come, and Buddhists could come. At the banquet, the leader of the exquisite banquet was the middleman between Buddhism and demons. Demons and Buddhism had been at odds for hundreds of years, but they could coexist peacefully at this banquet, because the leader of the exquisite banquet provided a platform for all parties to coexist. A huge array was set up at the banquet site, and no one could use its power. When the banquet started, all parties could interact and exchange. The most important thing was the auction. All the items auctioned were rare treasures in the world. Wei Wei Bai listened to the system's detailed explanation, nodded, and asked, "I didn't use a sticker. If the stingy donkey gave me power, I could turn into a human. Does this mean that if I work hard to absorb spiritual energy, I can also turn into a demon?" At that time, she became bigger. There was not a single mirror in the entire One Yuan temple. She spent 50 life points with great difficulty, and it was all for nothing. She couldn't see what she looked like with the water, and the pond was full of spiritual energy, so it was even harder to see a clear reflection. She looked at the water every day, wanted to see what her beautiful petals looked like, whether the color was smooth, whether the appearance was delicate. She had to endure the blurred effect and imagine for herself. When she turned into such a small person, it was even harder to see clearly. The system flipped through the information and thought hard for a while before concluding, maybe the male lead's power is special. You can accept it, so you can turn into a human. The main reason was that the host and the male lead's soul power was close to each other. Her life was all about seizing his luck. Their luck came from the same place. The male lead's power, of course, took care of her in all aspects. Furthermore, the male lead of this world was most loved by plants. His power had a nourishing effect on plants. It probably wouldn't be a problem to raise the host into a little person. It was just a matter of time. Wei Wei Bai was silent for a while. In other words, as long as I continue to receive the other party's power, I can become stronger? The system replied, "That's the theory." Wei Wei Bai sat on the monk's shoulder and turned her head to look at the side of his face. The young man's side profile was exceptionally perfect. His thin lips were bright red, and his eyelashes were long and narrow. Looking at him like this, there wasn't a single spot that wasn't good-looking. It was just that his hair was a little short. It was just a little longer than the crew cut. She moved closer to his cheek and then reached out to touch the side of his face. His skin was incomparably smooth and tender. She touched it again. Ning Chen paused and narrowed his eyes. "You don't like my shoulders?" He thought she wanted to come down, so she touched him like that. The little lotus fairy shook her head, her beautiful eyes filled with joy. "I just feel that you're so handsome, and I want to touch you." Ning Chan was speechless for a moment, but his mind was still unshaken. He did not correct her behavior. Instead, he continued to walk forward. The little lotus fairy chirped, "Monk, I saw a very big demon. The one with the horns is so ugly." The download the at https://m sashu com// the button at the bottom to record this chapter. Chapter 29-22. The young man's voice was low. That is the leader of the three lords of the demon path, called Evil Bell. Evil Spirit. Could this name be any more random? The little lotus asked again. "Then why are we here?" The young man said lightly, "We can exchange things here. I was born with a Buddhist bone, which is too pure. It is easy to be contaminated with filthy air, so I need to find a tool to purify myself." Wei Wei Bai smiled and said, "Monk, I can purify you. If you make me bigger, my purifying power will be stronger." The young man's eyelashes drooped, and he pondered for a moment before saying, "If I make you bigger, your desires will also grow. Sooner or later, you will also harm the world." The little lotus fairy's face turned cold. "If you don't want to lend me your power, then don't. Why are you wasting your breath? You're not reasonable at all. Anyway, demons harm people, and I have never harmed anyone. You're delusional and want to blame me. You're so bad." The young man walked under the peach tree. The peach blossoms were shining, and the light and petals fell on the young man. He raised his calm eyes. There is no demon that doesn't harm people. This is a demon's instinct. Because your desires are greater than anyone else's, once you're given power, you will definitely use it to harm others to replenish yourself. Demons and ghosts were all like that. There was no exception. The little lotus was also a demon. Sooner or later, she would have desires. When desires were rampant, it was time to harm people. Wei Wei Bai crossed her arms and sneered. Why don't you have desires? I see that your glabella is dark, and you have a lot of desires. You also harm people? You also eat people? Ning Chen's gentle lips slightly pursed, as if he couldn't win against her. He only said, there will be some strange things at the Ling Long banquet later. Don't be too surprised. Wei Wei Bai sat on his shoulder and crossed her legs. Her face was cold. Oh, you're talking to a demon that eats people and harms people. Aren't you afraid that I will eat you? Ning Chen stood for a while. He felt that the little lotus fairy seemed to have a lot of mood swings. This thought was just a fleeting thought, and it didn't affect his mood. Just as he was about to lift his foot, he saw the peach blossoms in front of him suddenly wither. Countless petals flew up, condensing into a huge wave of peach blossom petals, attacking him. The rest of the guests disappeared. In the entire world of pink peach blossoms, only he and the little lotus on his shoulder existed. The young man walked forward, ignoring the peach blossoms as if they were nothing. Peach blossom petal suddenly transformed into countless musical instruments, playing seductive music. Behind the instruments, bewitching women wearing revealing dresses appeared. They were so beautiful that they could cause one's blood to boil. They started to sway their bodies, using all sorts of seductive looks to entice those who saw them. Wei Wei Bai looked at those half-exposed breasts and those exposed long legs. She had an explosive figure and a face that was as beautiful as a fox spirit. She immediately asked the system, "Do I look like this? System, does it look good like this?" Which part of these flirtatious sluts were good-looking? She's not as cute and delicate as the host. Wei Wei Bai, the #1 beauty in the world, has to be sexy, beautiful, and have a super good figure. The system silently glanced at the host's flat figure. It didn't dare to say that the #1 beauty it bought was delicate and pretty. The host's aesthetic sense was actually this. No wonder she always thought that the #1 beauty badge was not good enough. Being so flirtatious was too tacky. The supermarket wouldn't even sell it. Those women closed in step by step, playing their instruments, creating countless flirtatious images. Master, why don't you look at me? I've admired you for a long time. Holy monk, I can satisfy you no matter what you like. Wei Wei Bai looked and blushed. Even a holy monk was tempted. She turned her head and saw Ning Chen's expressionless face. His eyes were calm, and his footsteps were firm as he walked forward step by step. He was completely indifferent to these beauties. Those women finally reached out, wanted to touch Ning Chen. In front of them, Ning Chen said lightly, "Break." On the peach blossoms, a golden light suddenly appeared, condensing into the shape of a magic wand, and smashed all the beauties to death. Wei Wei Bai, the scene was so brutal that she had no adjectives to describe her feelings at that moment. The peach blossoms dispersed, and the women disappeared. Everything returned to how it was before. The guests did what they were supposed to do, and the peach blossoms were still blooming. The little lotus finally asked in a trembling voice, "Monk, what was that just now?" The young man replied calmly, "The exquisite leader has admired me for more than 3 years. Every time I came, she would set up a seduction array to seduce my desires." Wei Wei Bai coughed softly. "Could it be that you were seduced?" The young man's voice was flat. "It's just a pink skeleton. I can just beat it to death." The little lotus was silent for a while, and suddenly asked carefully, "If I also admire you in the future and seduce you?" The young man tilted his beautiful eyelashes, and his eyes were calm and cold. He repeated softly, "Then I could just beat it to death." By Wei Wei, at the / crossover system. Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu, download Transmigration system. Adonis, come here and read this on your phone. https://m. Sasha. Calm the fast transmigration system. Adonis, come here. Chapter 29-23. At the Ling Long banquet, in the peach blossom forest, Ning Chun walked to his seat. There was only a simple table and a simple futon. It was as if the host knew his personality and specially prepared it. The little lotus fairy sat on his shoulder with a cold face, arms crossed in front of her chest without saying a word. My appearance is illusory. Does this mean that my appearance is illusory or abstract? The system said, it means that your beauty is unique in this world, so beautiful that it's like an illusion. Wei Wei Bai touched his chin. Although this is just to fool me, it still feels good to hear it. The system quietly took out a book called A Narcissist's 100 Self-Praises. It was worth it to spend the 30 life points of his embroidery money. Look at how happy the host is. Not far from Ning Chun was another seat, a reclining chair. No one was sitting. The servant had already arrived, not only with wine and food. Ning Chun did not respond. He looked at the depths of the peach blossom forest. At the edge, there was an ice-colored light of the formation, like ribbons running around the entire palace. He looked at it for a while and realized that it was too quiet around him. The little lotus fairy was noisy all the way, so she was not used to the sudden silence. He glanced to the side and saw the little lotus with arms crossed in front of her chest. She pouted her lips and puffed up her breath like a little squirrel stuffed with pine nuts. The young man was indifferent and stared at her for a while. She seemed to have noticed it and looked up at him. Then she snorted and turned around, not looking at him angrily. Ning Chun also looked down, as if he did not understand why she was angry. He looked at the food on the table. Other than wine and meat, these were rare delicacies that were not usually seen. The Ling Long leader would always prepare these things. Whether it was beautiful women or illusions, gold, silver, or food, they were all trying their best to arouse his human desires. He had never touched them. Wei Wei Bai turned to the system and said, "This damn Baldy, one look and you can tell that he's going to die alone." The system said, "He's supposed to die alone. He's a monk." He was an eminent monk, the leader of the entire Buddhism. If he dies alone, who dies alone? If other monks secretly die alone, no one would know even if they did not say it. But the male lead, his every move affected everyone's heart. If he wasn't old and lonely, how big of a wave would he cause? Perhaps all the monks would take him as their role model. From then on, monks would be able to marry. Wei Wei Bai also realized that a bald donkey really couldn't marry a wife, so she could understand his behavior. He had never seen a woman in his 8 lifetimes, never held a woman's hand, and never thought about what a woman would look like. Just thinking about it made him feel miserable. Suddenly, she heard a deep voice. "Hungry," Wei Wei Bai sneered. "Isn't it better if you starve to death? The world will have one less monster and one less person to kill. You should be proud. This is your karma." Ning Chun was still as indifferent as before. After a long silence, he sighed. "Then he is hungry." He suddenly stretched out his hand and placed it beside his shoulder. There's a green pastry on the table. It's made from plant pearls and is very beneficial to plant fairies. The little lotus fairy pouted and crossed her arms in front of her chest. She mocked, "Who's going to eat your broken things, damn monk?" Ning Chun's expression was indifferent. After a moment of silence, he said, "Then forget it," just as he was about to withdraw his finger. Suddenly, his fingertips tightened. The little lotus had already stretched out her delicate and nimble little hand, grabbed his finger, and climbed onto his palm. // Chapter 29-24. Wei Wei Bai sat on his palm and said coldly, "I'm hungry, monk." The youth's fingers paused. In the end, he didn't say anything and put her on the plate. The green pastry was in the shape of a flower. It was very beautiful. The pastry was a little shorter than Wei Wei Bai, but it was very big. This was indeed very big for the smaller Wei Wei Bai. She leaned over and kissed the big green pastry. Its fragrance assailed her nose. It seemed very tasty. Wei Wei Bai hesitated for a moment before saying, "This is for guests." It wasn't made by you, monk. So I'm eating the food of the guests here. It has nothing to do with you. The youth's eyelashes drooped slightly. His dark eyes were calm. His thin red lips moved slightly. It really has nothing to do with me. You can eat. This tone was no different from coaxing an insensible child. The little lotus fairy immediately smiled proudly. Then she leaned over and took a bite of the pastry. It was soft and sweet. Wei Wei Bai smiled. The little lotus fairy was wearing a pink lotus petal dress. The emerald green wristband on her small wrist was very cute. The youth's expression was still indifferent, but his eyes fell on her. A little demon. She hadn't harmed anyone. She was full of purifying spiritual energy, a type of demon that had never been seen before. She suddenly raised her head. The lotus buds on her long hair swayed. Monk, aren't you hungry? Why don't you eat? The youth's expression was indifferent. He was about to say something. The little lotus fairy tilted her head and said with a smile, "Don't tell me that food is also illusory. It's the same whether I eat or not." The youth pursed his thin lips and said softly, "The meat sack is still there. The necessary maintenance is still needed." Wei Wei Bai made a face at him. "I thought you would be so noble that you wouldn't even eat and directly become a Buddha. You would directly go to the Western paradise to be in love with your Buddha Lord." Ningchen looked at her indifferently for a while. Suddenly, he reached out his finger and touched her head lightly. She felt that she was being crushed. She immediately reached out her small hands to support his palm. "Monk, if you can't convince me, I'll crush you to death." Ningchen's tone was calm. "If you speak too much, sooner or later you will blurt it out. Be careful what you say and do." Wei Wei Bai escaped from under his fingertips. "You're an old-fashioned monk. Don't train me to be a serious little nun. I'm going to be the most beautiful big demon in the future." The young man lightly exhaled before saying, "You have no ambition." Wei Wei Bai took a bite of the pastry. "You're so ambitious. You're always making tofu dumplings." Ning Chan suddenly sensed something and lifted her up expressionlessly. He placed her on his palm and then placed her on his knee. The little lotus spirit sat in his palm. It was small and soft, exceptionally cute and delicate. It was as if she would disappear if he closed his hand. The young man faintly shifted his gaze away. "Let the exchange begin. You can stay in my hands for now." Wei Wei Bai looked around curiously. He found that those who were eating, drinking, playing chess, or painting began to look into the sky. Countless peach blossom petals flew from the peach trees into the air, forming a beautiful pink platform. The platform turned into stairs. The sound of bells rang out. A woman wearing a celestial red dress with a beautiful bell bracelet on her wrist appeared. The numerous bells on the bracelet rang as the woman shook her wrist. This kind of bell sound was fragmentary, but it stirred people's emotions. Wei Wei Bai supported her chin with both hands and sat in the monk's palm. She watched the woman with a hazy veil walk down the stairs step by step. Slash. Chapter 29-25. The shoes that were exposed under the skirt were also exceptionally exquisite and beautiful. She raised her finger, and countless petals flew up from all around her. A pink folding fan was born from the peach blossoms and came to her fingertips. Her voice was gentle and pleasant. "Thank you for coming to the banquet today. No matter if you're a demon, a Taoist, or a Buddhist, you can get what you want." These words of a Buddhist were faintly contained in her lips, incomparably sentimental. It made the ears of the people who heard it numb and hot. The woman glanced sideways at the silent monk who was sitting on the praying mat. Then, her gaze fell on the little flower demon in his palm. Her originally gentle gaze turned cold. Then, she looked at Ning Chun and was silent for a while. Then, she raised her fan and said loudly, "The first item to be traded today is a Taoist secret book, the Book of Unfettered Happiness. This Taoist friend hopes to exchange it for a gold-ranked alchemy furnace." Soon, a demon laughed and said, "Our ancestor wants this secret book. A Taoist secret book is not bad. I heard that the Book of Unfettered Happiness also has a list of aphrodisiacs. After eating it, one would be as free as an immortal and have 10 women in a night without any problems." "Ha! As soon as he said that, both the demons and demons below began to giggle. As the host, the masked woman, who is also the exquisite school's leader, said with a smile, "Okay, the Book of Unfettered Happiness can be exchanged for a gold-ranked alchemy furnace. Please register and then transfer the item to my exquisite pavilion. The owner of the Book of Unfettered Happiness, please keep the hairpin and come here with the hairpin to receive the item." A servant carried a tray with a booklet on it. He walked over to the demon and pressed his thumbprint on the booklet. Then, he went to give the hairpin to the owner of the Book of Unfettered Happiness. The trade went smoothly. After all, it was an annual trade and auction. Countless people accumulated all kinds of unimportant treasures that could be exchanged for good things, waiting to exchange for what they wanted. There was even a scene where two parties fought over one item. The scene was very lively. There was enough wine and food. There were even a few beautiful dancers in the middle to liven things up. Bored, the little lotus fairy rolled around in the monk's palm and lazily said, "Monk, I'm full. What do you want to exchange? Is it here yet?" Ning Chen's face was silent. His delicate face gave people a kind of cold and indifferent temperament. He heard the little lotus in his hand grumble lazily. After thinking for a while, he lowered his head and said softly soon, "Wei Wei by turnover," and sat up. "How fast? By the way, what do you want in exchange for what you want?" Ning Chen's calm gaze landed on her as he said in an indifferent voice, "You." Bai Weiwei was still holding her own hair, counting the strands. It was too boring. There was nothing to do. "I heard him say you." He didn't react in time. "You what?" The youth's voice was as calm as ever, without a trace of fluctuation. "I'll use you to exchange for what I want." Wei Wei Bai immediately sat up straight and said, "Monk, did you bring me out just to trick me into exchanging things?" Ning Chen looked at the peach blossom forest indifferently. He stroked her hair with his fingertips and said indifferently, "Yes and no." Wei Wei Bai widened her eyes and jumped up with her hands on her hips. "How can you be like this? You speak like you're in Zen. Who can understand you? Yes is yes, no is no." He said one sentence. She replied with a pile of words. The speed of her words made the youth a little stunned. Finally, he lowered his voice. "For the time being. Slash." Chapter 29-26. Wei Wei Bai was about to protest when a golden light appeared on his finger and turned into a rope. He tied her up and then waved a servant over. "Absorb the lotus essence of the Wan Yuan Buddhist Temple's spirit pond. This is a magic tool that can purify any dark aura. It already has its own consciousness." Wei Wei Bai was placed on the plate. She immediately rolled around, wanting to escape, but she found that the plate was not right. It was like a cage was binding her. She immediately shouted, "Monk, why are you so bad? I followed you because I trusted you, but you actually exchanged me for something. You're not a good person. You're even worse than me, this demoness." The youth looked at his empty palm and then looked up at Wei Wei Bai, who was being carried up. After a long time, he sighed. "I already said that it's temporary. How did he become an unforgivable bad person? This little demoness was really too noisy." Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 5. Wei Wei Bai was lying on the auction table. When she heard the sound of the favorability, she was speechless for a while before asking, "Why did the favorability increase at this time?" The system thought for a moment before replying, "Maybe he's happy that you can exchange for something, so he gave you 2 points as a breakup fee." Wei Wei Bai, that exquisite sect leader, turned around and came to the auction table. He saw Wei Wei Bai lying on the plate. She was so small, but so cute that it made people's hearts melt. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Ling Long was momentarily stunned when she saw this. Something that was too beautiful made people feel pity for it, but also made people want to destroy it. Exquisite said softly, "I thought that having a living thing by his side moved his heart. I spent 3 years and still couldn't make him have a trace of human feelings, let alone move his heart. This kind of man actually brought you along. Fortunately, you're here for the auction." He's still an emotionless piece of wood. Wei Wei Bai was jumping around, trying to break free from the golden rope. She rolled around on the plate. His voice was tender and angry. That bald donkey isn't just a piece of wood. He's a bad piece of wood. He lied to me and said that he wanted to purify himself. In the end, I came with good intentions, but he actually sold me out. Ling Long's eyes turned cold. Slander. He is such a noble and cold person. Why would he lie to you? You are such a dishonest vixen. You deserve to be sold. After saying this, she shouted loudly, "There is a spiritual pool purifying magical artifact. It has already gained sentience and can be used to refine medicinal pills. It is a great supplement, in exchange for a great monk's Saraira." Just as he finished shouting, someone immediately responded, "I have 10 Sarairas in exchange for that little toy." The one who stood up was actually the Bullhorn Demon King. His face was ferocious and ugly as he took out some relics from his bosom. The relics shone with a golden light. With one look, one could tell that these were the bones of a monk with extremely profound dermic powers. The Bullhorn Demon King laughed and said, "It took me 3 months of deployment to kill this bald donkey. That was the abbot of the 1,000 Origin Temple. His dermic powers were very profound. If I hadn't threatened him with a city of people in the end, he wouldn't have been willing to let me kill him." After he finished speaking, he chuckled. "That little thing, let me take a closer look. It's really beautiful. I'll feed it until it grows up and warms my bed." Wei Weibai looked up. Holy shit. For someone with a face complex, it was an extremely lethal appearance. Ling Long's thin lips curled up slightly under the veil, and her voice became much louder. "Please press your fingerprint. You could take this little vixen away first. Then, please put the relic on the plate. I will personally hand it to Master Ning Chun." Every time she said his name, Ling Long's tone would twist a few times. It contained a charm that seduced to the bone. / to facilitate your next reading, you can click on. Chapter 29-27. A servant came up to pick up the black wooden plate, but saw the little lotus fairy sitting there, tied up with a rope, glaring at him. The little girl had a jade-like face and clear eyes. Her slender hands and feet were as white and tender as glutinous rice cakes. She was so beautiful that people were mesmerized by her. Wei Weibai frowned. "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a beauty before?" The servant immediately blushed and lowered his head to pick up the plate. He carefully held his breath and walked forward step by step. When he passed by Ning Chun, the young man was indifferent. His eyes were indifferent, and his long fingers were pinching his prayer beads. The little lotus fairy jumped on the plate. "You bad monk, you sold me. I won't forgive you, you black-hearted ghost. You lied to me." The young man lowered his eyes and pursed his thin lips, but in the end, he remained silent and did not say anything. The oxhorn demon had a black face and fangs. He walked over with a smile, and when he saw Wei Weibai, his eyes lit up. He thought she was cute from afar, but when he looked closer, she was even cuter. If she grew up, he wondered how beautiful she would be. Wei Weibai frowned. He could not stand such an ugly face, so he went closer to her. "Is this ugly disease contagious?" "No way." She leaned back and said to the system with a cold face, "This guy, didn't his mother teach him not to go out when he's so ugly?" The system said, "This guy doesn't have parents. He came from a filthy place." Wei Weibai said, "How filthy? A septic tank." The system said, "No, the so-called filth comes from those dark places. It's formed by the filth and evil thoughts gathered in the human world. This guy's power is very strong. Anyone who touches him will be corroded." Wei Weibai said, "So this is a septic tank with sulfuric acid added?" The system said, "The host has always rejected ugly people." When Bai Weiwei saw the bull-horned ugly monster, she reached out her hand with a covetous expression and said, "Come, let me hug you, cute little goblin." She only felt that those hairy fingers and that dark face were both challenging her limits. She leaned back and was almost touched by him, but the Empress Dowager fell backwards, her whole body directly onto the black wooden plate. When Ugly Person saw her like this, he was delighted to see such a small and soft person. He wasn't angry at all. Instead, he reached out to grab her. The young servant suddenly said, "Please put the Saraira on the plate." The smile on the ox-horned ugly person's face immediately disappeared. He coldly curled his lips. Humph, such a disappointing thing. Here. The Saraira was thrown onto the plate, and golden light splashed out. This was the trace of the power of the Almighty being injured by the fall. Wei was almost hit by the Saraira. She immediately rolled to one side as she was tied up, but was blocked by the black plate's enchantment. She couldn't jump out of the black plate, but was blocked by the power of the black plate. She was like a pitiful little glutinous dumpling rolling back and forth. Seeing that she was about to roll into the hands of the ugly man, she angrily shouted, "Monk, if you don't save me, I will really hate you." Ugly person sneered. "After the exchange, you are mine. Why are you still calling that bald donkey?" When Wei Bai saw those hairy fingers coming towards her, she immediately closed her eyes and said to the system, "Buy me a bottle of disinfectant. I want to disinfect my whole body so that I won't be infected by ugly person's bacteria and become ugly." System? ? He thought that he understood the host well enough and had practiced his ability to praise. In the end, the host could still surprise him. Ugly person's bacteria. Aren't all bacteria about the same? Chapter 29-28. You have me, demons and demons, beauty and ugliness all have bacteria. In the eyes of the host, bacteria can be divided into beauty and ugliness. Then he twitched the corner of his mouth and finally calmed down. "Well, I'll buy you the most effective one. I guarantee that once it's sprayed, it can immediately beautify the ugly bacteria and make them beautiful. You'll be satisfied." Wei Bai nodded, satisfied. The system again, just as that hand was about to touch the tofu-like, delicate little demon. Suddenly, the ugly bull-horned monster paused. Its body emitted countless black gas, which turned into terrifying sharp blades and attacked wildly in all directions. But the black gas did not have any reaction and disappeared again. The golden light landed lightly on the bullhorn monster. Bit by bit, it entered the bullhorn monster. Xieling's whole body trembled. The finger that was about to touch Wei Bai immediately retracted. Wei Bai heard the movement and immediately opened her eyes, seeing the golden light formed by countless scriptures. The young man stood in the middle of the scriptures and slowly walked over. The beautiful golden light landed on his thick eyelashes and dyed his dark eyes, bringing out a strange and stunning luster. Ling Long was shocked and immediately shouted, "Ning Chun, you heard a guest at my Ling Long banquet. Don't blame me for being rude." As soon as the words fell, the blue halos around the peach blossom flew over like thousands of ribbons. The huge array began to operate. The Ling Long banquet could be held because of the Ling Long array, ensuring that no one could break it. Whoever hurt people here would not be able to escape the suppression of the array, and would even be directly killed by the array. Following Ling Long's orders, the array began to emit a terrifying tsunami-like power, rushing towards a young man, standing in the middle of the countless scriptures. The young man walked forward step by step, looking at the golden Zhou one, shattering Xieling's black protection, just as Xieling could not take it anymore. Countless light blue transparent ribbons rushed over, breaking the golden light. Xieling was about to be saved, but he saw the young man unhurriedly stretch out his finger, passing through the blue ribbons. The terrifying power could not hurt him at all. He was neither sad nor happy. Red cinnabar. His fingertips came to the black plate. Wei Bai immediately sat up, with a face full of desire. "Monk, you're here to save me." In the end, the young man's finger did not stop, and took the relic of the great monk, then looked up at the blue ribbons that kept coming. His voice was cold and distant. "I've been here for 3 years. Every year, I've been observing this place. This year, I've finally been able to crack this array formation. The exquisite banquet is a gathering of demons and demons. Most of the items exchanged are ill-gotten gains, and some are even obtained by taking lives. This place shouldn't exist. Buddha, the Tao was also formed, not to mention all kinds of demons and ghosts. They were all driven by their desires, and no one could escape from him. 2. Who would not? Even though he knew how dirty the underground transactions of the exquisite banquet were, he still chose to protect it just because it was beneficial to him. This was the second time the exquisite sect leader had been elected. For the first time, he set up the Linglong banquet and set up the Linglong array. Such a genius only did business with the three realms of Buddhism and Taoism. But in this generation, it was time. The young man looked up indifferently, looking at the Linglong banquet standing on the peach blossom steps. You've crossed the line. In just a few years, this Linglong banquet had become a protected place for all kinds of dark transactions. It affected the interests of all parties, a den of evil that could not be touched. / to make it easier for you to read next time, you can click. Chapter 2929. The exquisite hierarch smiled coldly. Ningchun, you're really shameless. Even if you're the leader of Buddhism and the abbot of Wanyuan Temple, can you break the exquisite array? This array was set up by my mother herself. She's a genius, so don't even think about resisting this power. After a pause, the exquisite hierarch suddenly smiled sweetly. Her veil was lifted by the wind, revealing her delicate chin. She practiced the art of seduction and exchanged it for an evil secret book from the devil. She killed 10 virgin girls every month and bathed in their blood in exchange for beauty and youth. Her every move was even more seductive. She laughed, and the broken bells on her wrists jingled with the sound of tinkling. Monk, don't you want a woman? Since you were born in the temple, you haven't even touched a woman's hand. Ningchen looked at her indifferently and suddenly raised the prayer beads on his wrist. The black prayer beads separated from the prayer beads. The beads flew into the sky. 108 prayer beads formed a perfect circular array. His voice was deep. The exquisite array is presided over by you. In the end, it lost its purity. The evil aura invaded, stained the blood, and damaged the edge of the array. What kind of evil demonic arts did you practice? After saying that, his thin lips opened slightly. Those scriptures seemed to come from the distant mountains, from the long river, and from the vast and boundless deep sea. His voice was soft, and his words were slow. The prayer beads fell into the blue ribbon array one by one. The exquisite array began to shatter. Evil Bell took advantage of the moment when Ning Chan was destroying the array and suddenly roared. He stretched out his finger and grabbed Wei Wei Bai. Wei Wei Bai realized that the rope on her body had dropped. She jumped up and immediately ran with her head in her hands. Monk, the monster is going to catch me. It's going to catch me. She ran to the edge of the black plate. She realized that the enchantment of the plate was also gone. Behind her were the plush fingers full of ugly bacteria, and the black plate was far from the ground. Her body was light. Wei Wei Bai took a deep breath and jumped out without hesitation. Evil Bell was about to change his method of fishing. However, he found that his finger was broken. The young man had already walked over. He raised his hand, and a golden ray of light caught Wei Wei Bai. Then, with a slight movement of his hand, she had already landed in the center of his palm. Wei Wei Bai quickly hugged one of his fingers and sobbed. Monk, you tricked me into selling it. You're so evil. Ning Chun lowered his head, his jawline slightly tightened. A helpless expression appeared on his usually calm and indifferent face. I said it's temporary. Wei Wei Bai threw a tantrum. I don't care. I was almost eaten by a monster. You have to get justice for me. He looked at the little person rolling around in his palm. That soft and tender feeling lightly scraped against his palm. The young man lowered his eyes and moved his fingers. Then he froze. Without saying anything, he raised his other hand, and a golden light passed through Evil Bell's body. The humongous and ugly body began to crumble. The remaining relics on his body had already flown out and landed in the youth's sleeve. Ning Chang glanced at the relics in his hand indifferently. Among the Buddhists, his character is the purest. As the abbot of Qianyuan Temple, he also does the best in everything. Half a year ago, he came to meditate with me for 3 days. After that, he left and disappeared. I came to Bureau Linglong to test if anyone had killed the Buddhists. The young man carefully opened his palm, and a little lotus spirit sat on it. He turned sideways and looked at the sky. / to facilitate your next reading, you can click on. Chapter 2930. The beautiful blue ribbons fell one after another. Like blue stars, they broke apart in front of his eyes. He looked down at Wei Wei Bai, who was still sitting with her arms crossed and her mouth pouting. After a moment of silence, he asked calmly, "Why are you still angry? Didn't he kill Xieling?" Wei Wei Bai glanced at him. "Monk, you don't understand women." Ning Chan said indifferently, "You're not a woman, you're a demon." Wei Wei Bai was immediately unhappy. She jumped up and puffed out her chest. "How am I not a woman? Are you blind? Can't you see clearly? Can I come closer?" The young man glanced at her body and then looked away. "I see clearly. You're a lotus spirit, formed by heaven and earth. You have the ability to purify. In my eyes, there's no difference between men and women." Wei Wei Bai suddenly sat down and then turned around. She crossed her arms again and raised her head. She snorted and ignored him. The young man lowered his eyelashes. His eyes were calm, and there was a trace of confusion on his face. He didn't seem to understand why she was so noisy. What was she angry about? He thought indifferently and felt that it was more difficult to understand than those difficult Buddhist scriptures. Then he saw that the array finally began to shatter and the ribbons disappeared. His golden scriptures had begun to fall on a large scale. On the contrary, the demons with the smell of blood died on the spot. He walked over, and the golden Buddhist light opened up a path. Beautiful flowers and plants grew out of the cracks in the ground. Those peach trees and floating cloud koi were also beginning to be destroyed by the real flowers and plants. Flowers bloomed one after another under the young man's feet. Countless creatures began to warmly welcome his aura. The young man looked at the rest of the Buddhists and Taoists. "It's not a good thing for you to be greedy. I don't want to kill you in the future and become a demon slayer. I will abide by my heart and be the demon slayer that always exists." After saying that, he walked towards the door. But the exquisite sect leader suddenly shouted, "Monk, you destroyed my exquisite feast, my exquisite array, and my foundation. I will break your hands and feet and make you into a human swine." After saying that, the exquisite sect leader suddenly removed her veil and danced. Countless bewitching fragrances assaulted him. Those Taoists who were originally stunned, as well as a few monks who could no longer maintain their composure, immediately shook their bodies. He had been charmed. Ningchen paused and turned around. The aroma assaulted him. He sighed softly and placed the little lotus fairy in front of his chest. He asked in a low voice, "Do you like this fragrance?" Wei Wei Bai was already coughing and sneezing. "Do you think I like it? This is too suffocating. Could it be that it's not body odor?" Ning Chen's voice softened. "I also think it smells bad." Wei Wei Bai turned around and snorted. "Don't think that I'll forgive you just because you talked to me. I'm still angry, monk." The young man's expression froze for a moment before he pursed his lips as if nothing had happened and fell silent again. Then he recited a passage of scripture in a low voice. The fragrance was all gone. Those who were about to attack him regained their senses. Their expressions changed drastically, and they turned to attack the exquisite sect leader. The exquisite sect leader's dance halted, and he fell to the ground, receiving heavy blows from all directions, and spurted out a mouthful of blood. She lay on the ground, and a mournful expression appeared on her beautiful face. "Ningchun, I've loved you for 3 years. Have you never taken pity on me? How would you treat me like this?" The young man's eyes were indifferent, and his voice was calm as he looked at her. "You're just a pretty skeleton. What's there to pity?" The exquisite sect leader's face was full of blood, and he laughed sinisterly. "Do you think I can't keep you? I want you to die with me." After speaking, she opened her mouth and was about to spit out the poisonous gas from the evil technique. However, she found that a golden exorcism wand was already hanging above her head, covering her. The young man's expressionless face was still expressionless. His eyes were cold and clear, bright and beautiful. Death is not to be regretted for harming others. If you don't change your mistakes, you'll be punished again. After speaking, he turned around coldly. When he reached the door, he suddenly thought of something and turned his face again. A trace of light appeared in his beautiful eyes. Also, you were wrong when you said that I have never touched a woman's hand in my life. He gently held the little lotus fairy in his arms. She is a woman, and I have touched her. After speaking, he stepped out of the door as if nothing had happened. The exorcism wand behind him fell. The exquisite sect leader let out a shrill scream, and then no sound came out. The little lotus fairy trembled. Ningchen noticed and said calmly, I won't hit you. Don't be afraid. Wei Weibai looked up. Monk, you'll never hit me, right? Ningchen looked down and was silent for a moment before slowly saying, That's not it. If you hurt someone, I'll still kill you with one strike. By Wei Wei, at the /crossover system, Adonis, come here and read the full article at https://www. Sashu. Download the read the full text. 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 To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click the button at the bottom to record the reading record. Chapter 29:31. The monk was destined to be a loner. He alone raised the standard of the loner model to a super VIP level. He was the monk's role model. Learn from him. Live a long life alone. Wei Weibai said to the system with a serious face, Don't learn this in the future. It's okay if you don't have a sweet mouth, but you beat me to death for no reason. Don't you have any manners? Strategy makes my heart ache. The system thought for a while and suddenly asked, If I suddenly meet an ugly monster like the ox-horn demon? Wei Weibai said expressionlessly, Don't explain. Remember to download the antivirus software and smash it a few more times so that it can't be revived. Delete it completely 10,000 times so that it won't appear in the system world and scare people. She was now the aggressor. If she didn't kill it first, what if she met such an ugly monster in the future? The system, then it felt that it had to ask clearly, if I look like the ox-horn demon. Wei Weibai was silent, then she laughed awkwardly. Our friendship is not something that can be judged by appearance. Am I the kind of bad person who would hurt my own people? Where's the form for you to change your system? I'll just look and not do anything. The system, suddenly its heart felt cold. The host liked beautiful things so much. It was so handsome. What if the host accidentally saw it and fell in love with it? She would be beaten by the male lead. Die. Wei Weibai said, Okay, I just spent 3 seconds to mentally prepare myself. Even if you're as ugly as bacteria, I won't despise you. I won't change you no matter who comes. Even if other systems are as handsome as Gu Tianla, they can't compare to you. The system was touched. It felt that its cold heart was poured with a cup of sugar water. It was about to say something. Then it heard the host say, My sweet-talking mouth has gone up another level, hasn't it? I'm really getting more and more beautiful. The system silently dug out the narcissist's words of praise and praised expressionlessly. Yes, you will always be the most beautiful person in this world. You are more beautiful than everyone, every flower, every brick, every pot, every electric appliance, and every broom. There are thousands and thousands of things in this world, but you are the most beautiful. Wei Weibai, although I know it just coaxes you, it still feels good. The system reached out and touched her hair with its transparent fingertips. Yep, as I said, the host is easy to coax. He was really easy to coax. Saying that she was beautiful made her happy. When Ning Chan returned, it was raining heavily. They sat on the vestments without a canopy. The rain was heavy. Normally, it would not matter, but now that Wei Weibai had shrunk, she simply did not know where to run. She immediately ran in circles and shouted, Monk, I'm going to be smashed to death. Ning Chun lowered his eyes to look at her. The rainwater stained his eyelashes and his eyes were clear. Then he sighed softly, as if he had never seen such a tormenting little fellow. He could only stretch out his fair fingers and gently lift her collar. Then he put her into his collar. She hung on from the gap of the collar. The beautiful young man was expressionless. My clothes are waterproof. You can hide here first. Wei Weibai's hair was wet. She reached out and grabbed her hair, afraid that the rain would make her bald. She immediately grabbed her hair and shook it dry while complaining. Aren't you very capable? Monk, why don't you know how to block the rain and make an umbrella? Ning Chun sat in the rain indifferently. The speed of the vestments did not change. His voice was calm. Why should I hide from the rain? The rain is also one of the thousands of living creatures. It's nothing to hide from it. Chapter 29:32. Wei Wei struggled to put her hands on his collar, her body hidden under his neck. This short-haired, bald donkey's clothes were warm. The youth's skin was very good, white and smooth. She was stuck at the collar, only revealing her head. The rain splashed on his clothes, but not a single drop was soaked. Suddenly, a drop of water fell. The little Wei Wei immediately dodged and looked up. She saw the youth's fair and beautiful chin, where the rainwater gathered, dripping down. Wei Wei immediately hid her face in his clothes, revealing a pair of clear eyes. She pressed against his skin. Her body was warm. She whispered, "Monk, why did you bring me here?" Ning Chun lowered his eyelashes. There were droplets of water on them, sparkling and translucent. "I brought you to purify my dark aura." The little lotus asked curiously, "You don't seem to have any dark aura now." The youth's voice was still clear and melodious in the rain. "Because I hid it." Wei Wei tilted her head, puzzled. "Where did you hide it?" The youth was silent for a moment. "In my heart." Wei Wei, what kind of Zen language was this? It was exhausting to talk to this damn bald donkey. The youth also felt that his words were too concise. He pursed his thin lips, moist and bright red. He then said softly, "I was born with the Buddha bone. It's too pure. The Linglong banquet is a filthy place. Those who go there are all excessively lustful. If there are demons, the filth of slaughter is abnormally thick." He raised his eyes and looked forward. Wan Yuan Temple was already faintly appearing in the lush mountains. 3 years ago, I went to the Linglong banquet because the sariras of great monks began to appear there. Buddhists had to be eminent and powerful monks. Only Buddhist cultivators with a kind heart would be able to produce relics after they died and were cremated. The abbot of Qianyuan Temple was not the first victim. If there was a need, there would be a supply. But there were only a few great Buddhists. There were only a few who could produce sariras. Relics were mostly hidden in Buddhist temples for worship. How could there be so many of them for people to profane and barter? Therefore, the demons set their sights on the great monks who were still alive. The young man's voice was low and calm. Even as he spoke of such a terrifying matter, there was no trace of emotion. "Every time I go to the Linglong banquet, it's to observe the Linglong formation. The array formation was a work of nature. It could suppress so many demons, devils, and Buddhists. How could it be an ordinary object?" Every time he returned from the exquisite banquet, he would go into seclusion for a month to study the array formations he saw. Last year, he had completed the blueprint, and this year, he had thought of a way to crack it. Only then did he go to the exquisite banquet again. "Every time I come back, I will be stained by the various dark auras from the exquisite banquet. They accumulate in the Buddha's heart and can only be expelled bit by bit through seclusion." Or he could go to the spirit pool and wash it off. After Ning Chun finished speaking, he felt that he had made a mistake. Usually, he was in Zen and did not speak much. He was also used to not talking much about anything. Why did he suddenly have so much to say? He quietly lowered his eyes and no longer spoke. However, the little lotus spirit was still chattering away. "Monk, the water on your chin is dripping onto me. Block it for me." Ning Chun, the little lotus spirit, raised her voice again. "Monk, Monk, your body temperature is high. I feel that you are dehydrated." Her current body was that of a lotus. Of course, she thirsted for water. "Ning Chun, you can come out and get wet." Wei Wei, "Humph, you're simply unreasonable. I am ignoring you." Ning Chun, what did he say wrong? This lotus spirit did not speak the same language as him. Why was she angry again? Say button below to record this reading record. Comma. Chapter 29:33. Back at One Yuan Temple, Ning Chun jumped down from his robe, and the water vapor on his body instantly disappeared. To him, the rain was no big deal. His robe was waterproof, similar to a raincoat, and his innate ability could also evaporate the water vapor on his body in an instant. Ning Chun returned to the side of the spiritual pool, stretched out his hand, and gently touched the little fellow on his neck. His fingertips paused for a moment, and he hesitated for a moment before confirming the small position. It was the collar of her robe. He was afraid that if he grabbed too hard, he would break her little neck. After Ning Chun carefully lifted the little spirit out, he looked up and saw that she had fallen asleep. She lacked strength. That was why she was so tired. Ning Chun walked to the pool, lifted the little girl, and put her in the clean water, and shook her. It was like the way a hot pot was rinsed, and rinsed. Suddenly, the little lotus spirit in the water spat a few times and woke up. Ning Chun calmly lifted her out of the water. Seeing that she had coughed out a few mouthfuls of water, she angrily scolded him in a soft voice. "Monk, are you trying to drown me?" He was silent for a while, then said indifferently, "You are a lotus, and you can't drown." Wei Bai said, "Who said that a lotus can't drown? I happen to be a lotus that can drown. Do you have any humanity, monk?" The young man pondered for a while, then shook his head. "Humanity is the most deserving, because humanity represents all kinds of desires, all kinds of..." Wei Bai raised her hand to stop him. "Don't talk, I don't want to kill you." Was this guy's brain made of cement bricks? He was too stubborn, too rigid. He was too inhuman. Ning Chun carried her with a calm face, but his eyelashes were slightly lowered, as if he didn't understand why she was angry. Wei swayed under his fingers. "Monk, you want me to purify you. How do I purify you, ah?" Ning Chun raised his head and looked around before saying, "Let's go to the meditation room. You can sit in front of me and absorb some of the dark aura. You're still young, so you might not be able to handle too much." Wei Bai, who was originally still in the shape of a blowfish, immediately flattened. She sighed, "Monk, you're finally speaking human language. I'll reluctantly absorb more black gas to make you feel better." Ning Chun reached out and placed her on his palm. Hearing her words, he paused for a moment, but didn't say anything. "Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 6. Wei Bai. This increase in favorability is simply not something that a human can achieve." She even asked the system, "Do I have a grudge against him? Did Lotus kill his parents or make him a monk?" This increase in favorable impression points was simply too stifling. The system flipped through the information. "No, the two of you don't have any enmity. You don't even have any interactions. The only interaction is that you've been drinking his bathwater." Wei Bai, the system immediately corrected him. "Your lotus body drank it, not you." Wei Bai, puke. Ning Chun walked back to his meditation room and sat on the futon on the ground. The prayer beads on his fingers flew out and surrounded him, emitting a golden light. He put his hands on his knees and looked down at Wei Bai, who was sitting on his knees. "Don't force yourself." Wei Bai's face was cold. "It's best if you die. Who's willing to force themselves for you?" Ning Chun nodded in agreement. "That's good. If you accidentally absorb too much and die, wouldn't I have committed a sin of murder and added another resentful spirit's aura? It's troublesome to purify it." Wei Bai. "The system, Prince Charming, come here." The system, Prince Charming, come here. System, Prince Charming, come here. The system, Prince Charming, come here. Download the at https://m. Sasha. ComSave button at the bottom to record this chapter. The book, please recommend it to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Chapter 29:34. She reached out and silently touched her heart, feeling a heart attack waiting for her. Is this human language? Why is it even more disgusting than the system of the first plane? Ning Chun saw that her face was even colder. She seems to be angry again. Is this lotus inflatable? She gets angry so easily. His eyes were indifferent. His fingertips fell lightly on her hair, rubbing it lightly. It messed up her hair, making the lotus bud tremble. Wei Wei Bai immediately covered her head with both hands. "Monk, what are you doing?" Ningchen looked at her indifferently for a while, then said calmly, "You're so easily angered. How can you become a big demon?" Wei Wei Bai snorted coldly. "You don't need to care about what I become. You said that you'll kill me with a stick when I become a big demon." Ning Chun stared at her quietly for a while, then said indifferently, but there was a trace of undetectable hesitation. "If you don't hurt people, I won't hurt you." Wei Wei Bai rolled her eyes at him. "You fool! Who coaxes girls like you? The more I listen, the angrier I get. You should sew up your mouth. You'll be accumulating merit if you don't say anything." After saying that, she coldly turned around and crossed her arms in front of her chest, saying, "I'm angry. Don't talk to me. If you ignore me, I'll ignore you too." The young man looked at her quietly for a while, a trace of confusion appearing in his dark eyes. How could she get angry over this? What a strange little demon. He sighed lightly, thinking that he shouldn't be confused about this. After all, she was just a newborn little demon. Although it took 100 years for her to become a demon, it didn't mean that she had 100 years of wisdom. Maybe she had a 10-year-old mind? He stretched out his hand, and the light of Buddha appeared on his fingers. Then he pressed his hand on his chest, and the golden light of Buddha opened the dark place. A dark aura appeared. The hideous and terrifying darkness surged out from the place that was glowing. Roaring, surging, silent, evil spirits constantly twisted and merged, but they couldn't escape the seal of the Buddhist prayer beads. They could only surge in the entire Buddhist temple. It was like hell on earth. The twisted heads and countless bony hands seemed to be dragging someone into the abyss. Wei Wei Bai was shocked as well. "Monk, why don't you say that there's so much black qi? You must be a paste. You'll be stained with it whenever you pass by. That's why you've accumulated such a terrifying thing." Ning Chen quietly lowered his eyes. His face was pale, but his tone was still calm. "It's only a part of it. Humans are too stubborn. I can kill demons and demons, but I can't get rid of these things." It was so dark, so sinister. It was the accumulated desire of countless humans. The fiendish demons were merely intermediaries. He killed demons and saved people, but in the end, he was tainted with the negative karma and black energy of countless people. There was no way to resolve it. Although the innate Buddha bone allowed him to gain a faster understanding of source abilities than any other Buddhist cultivator, it also brought about terrible repercussions. His voice was indifferent. "If you can't purify it, you can leave. After all, this is indeed a little scary." Wei Wei Bai immediately frowned. "It's not just scary. Where did you get so many ugly monsters? Can't you give them plastic surgery to make them look better?" After saying that, she took a deep breath and jumped out, leaving the protection of his Buddhist light. Countless darkness seemed to have met a purifier and dissipated around her. Wei Wei Bai's face also began to turn pale. She had difficulty breathing, and her body was extremely heavy. Although the nature of the lotus was to purify, there was a limit to it. There were so many of them. Wei Wei Bai narrowed her eyes and said to the system, "Give me an air purifier or something and help me purify this thing." Chapter 29:35. System. As expected of the host, you're willing to risk your life for favorability points, even sacrificing your life points. Then, the host complained, "These things are too ugly. Take them away quickly. I feel like if my eyes look at them for too long, they'll pollute my beautiful eyes and infect me with ugly bacteria." System. Very good. That's very host. Ning Chun thought she would purify a portion of it. After all, her abilities were limited. He didn't want her to purify all the dark energy in the house. He just wanted to scare her. Nothing good would come out of her sticking to him. Although he didn't know why she liked to follow him, he didn't want her to follow him all the time. With so much dark energy, it should be enough to scare her away from sticking to him. Ning Chen looked up indifferently at the darkness in the sky. In the light of Buddha, countless dark energy was still pouring out. He was about to stop releasing the dark energy. Suddenly, his body felt lighter. Then he saw the little lotus fairy walking step by step towards the darkest part of the house. Wherever the little body went, the dark energy would be purified into white fragments. His eyelashes trembled slightly, his eyes trembled, and his thin red lips pursed slightly. She shouldn't be able to stand it. She was still purifying. System. How is it? An air purifier that can purify smog can easily absorb a little bit of dark energy. Do you want to absorb all of it? Bai Weiwei walked forward step by step, unhurried, but she didn't feel uncomfortable at all. No, let the bald donkey bear more of the darkness. Let him suffer and remember my good. I'll let him feel comfortable for a few minutes, and then feel uncomfortable. Then he won't be able to get rid of me. System. Why did it sound so much like a criminal case of selling addictive drugs? The host really was a heartless and unscrupulous person. Ning Chan saw the ferocious dark energy pouring into the little lotus fairy's body. Then it was purified into fragments by her body. She stood in the darkness and the white fragments. Her black hair fluttered, and her lotus bud began to wither. Her little body was trembling. Ning Chan clenched his fingers, his fingertips touching his palm. Finally, he whispered, "Don't purify anymore. You can't take it." She was just a little demon that was just born, so this much dark energy would destroy her. Weiwei Bai's footsteps paused. She suddenly turned around and said with a smile, "Oh, monk, you feel bad for me." Ning Chen's face froze for a moment before his voice faded. "Stop, I'm much better." He really felt much better, because she had absorbed too much dark energy. He moved his finger away from his chest and did not release any more dark energy. However, there was still some dark energy floating in the room. Weiwei Bai opened her arms and suddenly took a deep breath. "Monk, you see, I've sacrificed a lot for you. You're not allowed to drive me away or say unpleasant things to me in the future. Otherwise, you'll be considered ungrateful, okay?" As soon as he finished speaking, all of the dark aura disappeared. Meanwhile, Weiwei Bai squatted down in a daze, her entire body trembling. Due to excessive absorption and excessive purification, her body suddenly became much bigger. This was the result of the body growing due to the excessive power that was still in a contest of strength. Ning Chen's face finally changed slightly. He was about to say something. However, he saw Weiwei Bai, who had already grown up to the height of an ordinary woman. The lotus bud on her head had already withered. She suddenly stood up and turned around to smile at him sweetly. Then she ran in front of him and bent down to say, "Hey, monk, I've become taller." Ning Chen's lips were a little pale. He saw that her beautiful face was completely pale. He was about to say something. Weiwei Bai had already lowered her head and kissed him. A light kiss, a fresh fragrance of flowers, and a place that had never been touched before was touched by someone. That soft touch swept across Ning Chen's heart like a tsunami. His calm eyes widened in an instant. However, Weiwei Bai waved her hand and immediately said, "Okay, I've purified the dark energy for you. I'm leaving." After saying that, she turned around and ran out. However, before she could run 2 steps, she swayed and suddenly fell. Ning Chen immediately got up and reached out to catch her, but all he could do was hug a dull lotus. The lotus was lusterless and lay in his arms on the verge of death. Ning Chen's beautiful brows slightly furrowed. He finally sighed. "Why do you have to do this?" Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 10. Chapter 29:36. Weiwei Bai was stunned. She stretched out her wrinkled leaf and touched her pitiful faceplate. The flower was also wrinkled and did not have any beautiful luster. She felt that if she was a human now, her body was dry, her skin was dry and rough, and even her face was wrinkled. She was now an ugly flower. Fortunately, she was not human. She did not want to see herself become wrinkled, dry, and yellow like a ghost without water. Bai Weiwei pitifully touched her plate with her face painted on it. Because the air purifier had purified too much, the purified dark aura turned into power and poured into her body. It made her grow bigger, and then the power was used up and she became small again. Because of the excessive use of power, the petals were dry. Sitting next to her, a young man in a white robe was holding the prayer beads with his fingers. He lowered his eyes and thought for a while before saying cautiously, "You're just short of water. Drink more water and you'll be fine." Wei Weibai was angry. "Drink your bath water? You bathe here every day. The water I drink is not clean anymore." Ning Chan was silent for a moment and finally spoke carefully again. "Then I'll go elsewhere." This was the spirit pool that could purify the filth. The rest were not effective. Wei Weibai raised the leaf with difficulty and became even angrier. "Where are you going? Are you going to give your bathwater to other little demons?" Ning Chun, he suddenly felt that it was better not to speak. It seemed that she would be angry no matter what he said. What was she angry about? Ning Chun thought indifferently. He couldn't figure it out. It was too difficult. Then he turned slightly to the side and sat cross-legged on a huge lotus leaf. The lotus leaf swayed gently as he turned his body. "Wei Weibai, monk, do you think I'm ugly and don't look at me anymore?" The young man was silent for a while. Should he talk to her or not? If he did, she would be angry again. "Wei Weibai, monk, you kissed me and you want to go back on your words, right? You don't even look at me because I'm ugly. Scumbag." "Scumbag, what was that?" Ning Chen pondered with an expressionless face. Finally, he sighed and turned around. The helplessness in his voice began to become obvious. "I didn't. It's you." At this point, the young man quietly lowered his eyes and silently turned his back to her, silently chanting the sutra. He was not good at arguing about this. The little lotus fairy held her own face and lowered her head bitterly. "Will I be so ugly in the future, monk?" Even the #1 beauty badge couldn't save her face from being poisoned by the dark fog. Sure enough, after seeing too many ugly people, one would become an ugly person. Ning Chan silently counted the prayer beads. He didn't say anything. On the calm surface of the water, countless lotuses stood quietly. Only a small lotus was chirping nonstop. It was as if he had always preferred peace and quiet throughout the years. When had he ever had such a noisy little thing by his side? No one disturbed him, so he didn't disturb others either. Everything in the world, even the hell created by the dark aura, was often silent. Ning Chen quietly looked at the black sandalwood bead on her finger and sat on the green lotus leaf. Beside him, the little lotus fairy stretched out her dry leaves and hooked the corner of his clothes. "Monk, you're in a daze again. Are you avoiding me? Do you think I'm ugly?" Ningchen was pulled by her leaf. Because of the extra force, the lotus leaf lost its balance and was on the verge of collapsing. The little lotus fairy pulled him to her side. The young man looked up at her and suddenly said indifferently, "You're not ugly." Wei Weibai coldly glanced at the plate on her face. "You're lying." The young man sighed softly and then said in resignation, "You're very beautiful." As soon as these words fell, the leaf that was hooking him suddenly lost its strength. /T quick comma. Chapter 29:37. The leaf under him swayed again and left her side. The young man turned his head as if nothing had happened and didn't say anything again. It was as if the sentence just now was not said by him. The little lotus fairy also didn't say anything. She just stood there quietly with her petals lowered, as if she was looking at the fish swimming quietly under the water. The young man was silent for a long time, but he didn't hear the little lotus speak again. Angry again, he looked to the side strangely and wanted to look back, but felt that he cared too much about a flower. A strange ripple appeared in his calm heart. Like the water under the lotus, it kept spreading. Ning Chan gently turned his head to look at her, but he found that she was holding her petals with her leaf. The petals that had no luster just now, but they were dyed with a charming red, although the leaf was still dry. But the petals were really beautiful, bright, but not charming, like a beautiful thing that came out of the clear water, clear and beautiful. Ning Chun faintly lowered his eyelashes, covering the strange fluctuations in his black eyes. Then he got up and stood steadily on the young man on the lotus leaf. He jumped down and stood on the water. The Buddha beads were still floating in the air, following his footsteps. He walked to the edge of the water and was about to leave. The little lotus fairy behind him suddenly said, "Monk, you're also old and handsome." Ning Chen's footsteps paused, and he almost knocked into the stone by the water. He was silent for a long time and finally sighed. He felt that he really didn't understand the thoughts of a lotus. Then he turned and left. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 13. Wei Bai, this stingy little bald donkey, can't he properly increase his favorability? Others would increase it by 5 or 10 points. After so long, he would increase it by 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, and so on. Bai Weiwei felt that her disheveled face was rounder with anger. She cupped her face with Yi Zi and said to the system, "Restore me to my original state, BA. Seeing my own Yi Zi so ugly, I'm sad, ah." Yes, most of the dark side effects were absorbed by the purifier. In fact, she had only absorbed a small amount. She was just fooling bald Donkey Ning. There was no other way. She deliberately turned ugly to act pitiful. He wanted to see if he could get more favorable impression points. The system silently restored her to her original state. It watched as the host turned back into a beautiful and bright flower. Wei Bai stared at the water. Through the hazy water surface, he still couldn't see his appearance clearly. However, one could tell that she was the most beautiful flower here. That was enough. Wei Bai said, "I've never seen my face turn into a human." There was not a single mirror in sight. Bald donkeys didn't need to comb their hair and didn't need to worry about their hairstyle. Therefore, they didn't even bother to buy a mirror. What a bunch of ugly monks with no aspirations. The system said, "Believe in badge. You are the prettiest, and no one can be prettier than you. Believe in professionals, believe in supermarkets, and believe in legitimate products." Bai Weiwei touched the plate on her face, then nodded. Yes, she was in a good mood. Even if the stingy monk's favorability didn't increase, with this face, it was still pleasing to the eye. The 1,000 yuan temple held another Dharma assembly. The young man sat on the lotus platform. His pale face was silent. The red cinnabar was still bright, but it couldn't suppress his cold temperament at all. Everyone sat cross-legged quietly below, listening to Ning Chen's clear voice. It was not easy for Buddhists to practice Zen. Every time Ning Chen held a Dharma assembly, it was the time when they were most sincere and serious. Download the at https://m Sashu. Com button at the bottom to record this chapter. Chapter 29:38. At this moment in Wan Yuan Temple, regardless of whether it was winter or drought, flowers would bloom and cranes would land on the ground. All living things with spirituality would instinctively get close to Ning Chen. The floating prayer beads were wrapped around his wrist, and the golden tassel fell beside his leg. His fingertips were pale and pure like snow. Suddenly, the golden tassel was tugged by someone. Ning Chen opened his thin lips slightly and was explaining the sutra. His tone suddenly paused, and when no one noticed anything strange, he continued the explanation just now. The young man's voice was pleasant and cold. When it entered the ears, it washed away the distracting thoughts in the mind. The little person grabbed his tassel and climbed up. She even kicked his leg. This made Ning Chen's eyelashes tremble slightly, but he still did not lower his head and maintained his calm appearance. Wei Bai, who had once again spent a lot of money, bought the damn transformation sticker again, wanting to gain the monk's favorability. Otherwise, she would have to stay in the spiritual pool every day. Even if she waited until the lotus flowers withered, she might not gain the monk's favorability. Bai Weiwei grabbed the tassel and hugged a floating Buddhist prayer bead. Like a swing, she shook it. Then, with a tug, she let go. She instantly fell into Ning Chen's arms. The young man, who was still explaining calmly, finally looked to the side and saw Weiwei by falling towards him while covering her face. She shouted, "Monk, I'm going to fall to my death. You have to catch me." Under the lotus platform was a very high flight of stairs. If she fell, even if her body was light, she would still be injured. The young man, who was originally holy and cold, finally showed a trace of helplessness on his face. He sighed faintly, stretched out his beautiful fingertips, and spread them out. The little person fell right into his palm. The sudden touch was soft. Her lotus dress was also very pink, giving people the feeling that she was a glutinous rice ball. This sudden turn of events interrupted the rhythm of the explanation. The young man pursed his thin red lips and lowered his eyes. His eyes reflected her body that was rolling on his fingers. She sat up with difficulty and immediately showed him a cute smile. She even winked at him. "Monk, I miss you, so I came to find you." Ningchen looked at her silently for a while before he casually placed her on his knees. Then, he looked up again. He looked at all the monks who were dumbfounded. His voice was still calm. "Continue." The old monk at the side immediately lowered his head and obediently knocked on the wooden fish. Wei Wei Bai sat in his palm, curiously, looking left and right. "Monk, it's fine if you're not interesting, but you've even nurtured a bunch of even more boring monks. Can't you do something fun?" Ning Chun ignored her. It was as if there was nothing more important to him than explaining the scriptures. Wei Wei Bai snorted coldly. She suddenly raised her hand and blew on her sharp fingernails. Then he scratched his palm. Ning Chen's expression was calm. Wei Wei Bai coldly snorted and scratched her fingertips. His skin was really thick. He couldn't even scratch it. She frowned and lowered her head. Her 10 fingernails lit up, and then she scratched quickly as if she was digging the ground. Finally, Ning Chen's eyes trembled slightly, and his fingertips trembled. His voice explaining the scriptures also lowered. "Wei Wei Bai, scratch, scratch, scratch. You stingy bald donkey." Under the warning of the sound of the wooden fish, everyone lowered their heads again and began to listen to the scriptures carefully. In the end, they couldn't hear it, because the young man on the stage didn't speak. They looked up again, only to see the young man on the lotus platform squinting his eyes and quietly looking at his palm. // Chapter 2939. This was the first time they saw such a serious expression on their abbot's face. It seemed like he had encountered some unsolvable problem. Ningchen was silent for a while before he turned his head and said in a low voice, "Do your homework for the rest." Then he closed his fingers gently. His beautiful fingertips were like a wall, preventing the person inside from falling out. Then he turned and left. Once he was out of everyone's sight, he said softly, "Nonsense. You're just a demon. How can you go to this kind of Dharma assembly?" There are plenty of demon slayers among the Buddhist cultivators who are participating in this Dharma assembly. A weak little demon like you could be crushed to death with one finger. Wei Wei Bai sat up straight and hummed delicately, "I miss you." Ningchen stopped his tracks. He felt like they were communicating from different worlds. Why is she so disobedient? Back in a meditation room, Ning Chun put her on the table and took out a bead from the prayer beads. Don't force yourself to transform into a human form. It's too damaging to your foundation. Besides, you've been on land for a long time and lack of water will cause your cultivation to regress. After saying that, the prayer bead on his pale fingertips fell into her arms. She hugged the prayer bead and was stunned. Then she looked up. "Is this for me, monk?" Ningchen looked at her indifferently for a while before nodding indifferently. "I wanted to give it to you before, but you were too noisy. So I gave it to you today." He wanted her to be a lotus for a while longer. That way, his ears would be quieter. What he didn't expect was that she forced herself to transform into a human to find him. Wei Wei Bai hugged the large prayer bead. Suddenly, tears fell from her beautiful eyes. "Monk, you're really a good person. This is your life bead. You're giving it to me, aren't you?" Ning Chun didn't want her to be too grateful. He didn't care about this. However, he heard the little lotus fairy say, "Do you like me?" The young man lowered his eyelashes and looked at her quietly for a while. Suddenly, he reached out and wanted to take the prayer bead from her arms. "Forget it. Just give it back to me." Bai Wei Wei immediately hugged the prayer beads and opened her mouth to bite his finger. It was a small bite mark. It didn't hurt at all. It only itched. His fingertips paused. However, he saw Wei Wei Bai snort coldly. "Monk, if you give it to me, it's mine. How can you snatch it back? You're shameless." Ning Chen's eyes were calm. After a while, he took back his finger as if nothing had happened and didn't say anything. Then he turned around to get the teacups and began to pour the tea. When no one was paying attention, his fingertips lightly touched the difference, but they froze. Then, Wei Wei Bai heard the favorability notification sound. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 15. Wei Wei Bai. Bah, he's so stingy that he doesn't look like a man. Wei Wei Bai studied the Buddha beads and realized that the Buddha beads were filled with flowing energy. She took a deep breath, and the energy instantly surged into her body. Before she could react, she had already fallen from the table onto the floor. When Ning Chun heard the commotion, he immediately turned his head. His gaze landed on the ground, but he suddenly froze. Wei Wei Bai touched her waist and looked up. Her bright red lips were slightly pursed. She tilted her head and said unhappily, "Monk, what are you looking at? My waist hurts." The young girl sat on the ground. Her pink dress hung down messily, revealing her white jade feet that were slender and delicate. Her long hair fell to the ground, as smooth as ink silk. Her eyes were like the mist of a spirit pool, hazy yet clear. There was a contradictory beauty that could turn all living things upside down. She had once become bigger, but it was shrouded in darkness, and her figure was illusory, so he couldn't see it clearly. However, he never thought that he would suddenly see her in her physical form, or even her mature form. She was a beautiful demon that could bring chaos to the world. Ning Chen held the teacup in his hand. He suddenly turned around and said to her, "You've absorbed too much energy. You need to go to the spirit pool to digest and cleanse it. Take the Buddha beads with you. If you don't have enough energy, you can absorb it." Wei Wei Bai jumped up. Only then did she realize that she had grown up. She immediately smiled. "Monk, I've grown up." Ning Chen's tone was calm, and she immediately picked up the Buddha beads. Then, she happily turned around and ran away. "This thing is very useful." "Thank you, monk." Ning Chan expressionlessly turned around. When he saw Wei Wei Bai at the door, she suddenly turned around and pointed at her bright red lips. "Right, monk, am I beautiful when I've grown up?" Ning Chun, Wei Wei Bai laughed happily and then left. Ning Chun stood in place. His eyes were still indifferent. Then, he slowly raised the teacup in his hand and took a sip. The tea was cold. As for him, his chest began to heat up. Was this a desire? After he finished drinking the tea, he slowly let out a sigh of relief. Then, he softly muttered to himself, "What a big trouble." Ding! The male lead's favorability has increased to 20. The and read the at https://www.sashu.com/the and read the at https://www.sashu.com/ and read the at https://www.sashu.com and read the at https://m Sashu.com save button at the bottom to record this chapter. Chapter 2940. Wei Wei Bai was squatting on a lotus leaf, holding a black prayer bead in her hand, thinking about how to eat it. The system said that if this thing could be completely digested, then she would be able to maintain her human form for a long time and would not shrink. But the prerequisite was that she could completely digest it. If she couldn't digest it and stuff it in, it would explode. Wei Wei Bai hesitated, but still felt that it would be too ugly to explode. So she put the prayer bead in her sleeve. This lotus dress could change size according to her body shape, and even the sleeves had pockets to store things. Sure enough, being a fairy had its benefits. At least it could save on clothes, because clothes could change size by themselves, and they could also clean themselves. Wei Wei Bai held her face with both hands. "I need to find a mirror." The strategy wasn't important. The mirror was. Then it reminded her, "You're a fairy a big fairy. Staying in the spirit pool is still within the male lead's range, so no one dared to come over, so no one noticed you. Now there are a lot of demon slayers outside, so you'll probably be killed if you run out. Actually, the host wasn't a fairy. She was still a normal lotus. Her human nature was also because of the sticker. But the sticker couldn't fight against the heavenly axiom. It could only last a little bit each time, and it couldn't let the host grow. But the male lead's prayer beads could. The prayer bead's power was used on the sticker. The sticker had an endless supply of power. It allowed it to produce a huge amount of power to fight against the heavenly axiom, turning the host's normal plant body into a human form. But as a fairy without a fairy's aura, she had the purification ability of the lotus. Other than drinking more water than humans, she had no other specialty. Right? Was narcissism considered a specialty? If it was, then the host was still invincible. Wei Wei Bai sat on a lotus leaf, silent, as if she was thinking hard about something. The system waited silently. It was probably some sort of strategy that was about to be created. Finally, Wei Wei Bai's expression softened. Okay, I'll go find a monk and ask him to buy me a mirror. Wei Wei Bai rubbed her chin again. No, this won't do. The monk doesn't look like a good person who would buy a mirror for others. His favorability is too low. I'd better increase his favorability first. System, we've finally gone back to the walkthrough. It really wasn't easy. Wei Wei Bai stepped on the surface of the water. Her body was still as light as a feather. Even if she transformed into her human form, it was only the weight of the lotus. He could walk on water. It was already dark. Several oil lamps were lit in the meditation room. It was a little dim. However, Ning Chun was not bothered at all. Instead, he lowered his head and flipped through the scriptures. Her fair fingertips landed on the scripture, glistening like jade. His features were handsome and his expression was calm. Suddenly, he realized something and heard a sweet laughter. His eyes turned cold as he slowly raised his head. He saw a beautiful pink dress hanging down from the crossbeam. A pair of slender and exquisite feet were faintly discernible under the dress. Above that was the beautiful white color of her calves. He paused slightly, but did not say anything. He continued to flip through the scriptures. The woman asked, "Monk, am I beautiful?" Ning Chun was indifferent. The woman suddenly poked her head out from a beam. Her exquisite and beautiful face could charm almost everyone in the world. It was, Wei Wei Bai, why are you looking at this broken thing again? Don't you want to look at me again? Ning Chun finally sighed. That was why he said it was troublesome. Transmigration system. Prince Charming, come here. 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 Chapter 2941. He had too much darkness on him, and it condensed into a hell that circulated in his Buddhist heart. Even if the little lotus fairy could purify it, she couldn't purify a hell. She could only make him feel better and even clearer so that he could continue to suppress this dark hell. But hell was more like a demon that had its own thoughts and consciousness. It was smart and cunning, cruel and twisted. His Buddhist heart was stirred up by the little demon, and a crack appeared. And this crack was known by the dark hell. In the future, it would no longer be a mountain of bones, but temptation. It turned into her appearance to continue to tempt him. Ning Chun stretched out his hand expressionlessly, and a faint Buddhist light appeared on his fingertips. The woman formed by the dark aura had already sat on the table and was lying on the scriptures, looking at him seductively. Monk, aren't you going to touch me? I'm so soft. Ning Chun stretched out his hand and gently tapped the middle of her forehead. You should stop. Sooner or later, I will have a way to completely purify you. The dark aura that turned into Wei Wei Bai suddenly had a ferocious expression, and its body shattered little by little. Old stubborn man, just you wait. Your Buddhist heart has been stirred and your desire has been born. You think you can destroy us? Dream on. I'll wait to completely pull you into hell and let you suffer a fate worse than death. I'll let you completely fall and become a demon, spurned by thousands of people in the world. At that time, you will be as filthy as us, as beyond redemption." As soon as he finished speaking, the dark aura that turned into a human figure dissipated in the Buddhist light, just like that. Ning Chun withdrew his finger as if nothing had happened, and then continued to read. Just as he was about to flip through the pages, he heard a delicate voice. "Monk, you're actually reading scriptures. It's too boring." Ning Chen's fingertips paused, and the Buddhist light faintly appeared again. The illusion came again. Suddenly, a pair of hands pressed down on his scriptures. "Monk, are you in a daze? Why aren't you replying?" Ning Chen looked up and saw the girl looking at him expressionlessly. She was frowning as if she was dissatisfied with his neglect. Ning Chen looked at her silently for a while. He finally relaxed a little and retracted the Buddhist light on his finger. Then he said slowly, "Since I have nothing to do, I'll just review it. It's not boring." Wei Wei Bai was too lazy to blindly decipher these antique scriptures with him. She immediately grabbed the table, lightly jumped up, and sat on his scripture. "Monk, I want to buy something from you." Ning Chen's expression was still indifferent, but his eyes fell on the scripture under her skirt. After a moment of silence, he said, "What is it?" Wei Wei Bai rubbed her chin and giggled. "Buy me a mirror. I'm so big now, I must be very beautiful. But there are no mirrors in the temple. I can't even see my own face." Ning Chen's tone was flat. "Your appearance is just." Before he could finish his words, his face was pulled. The young girl's slender fingers pinched his cheeks. "Say it. Say it again. My appearance is illusory. You're just jealous of my beauty. You're about to go bald, ugly, and gossipy, and you still have the nerve to talk about my appearance? Are you worthy?" Ning Chen, bald donkey, was a little unpleasant to hear. For a moment, he couldn't react. Then he remembered that he had forgotten to cut his hair. His hair had grown to the back of his neck. Because there were too many miscellaneous matters, plus the destruction of the Linglong banquet and the death of the Linglong sect's leader. Buddhism was now under great pressure. Demons and devils were now attacking the disciples of Buddhism. // save button next time you open the bookshelf, you'll see it, if you like. Chapter 2942. Some of the Taoist regulars at the exquisite banquet were also dissatisfied with his methods of destruction. Unlike Buddhists, Taoists were more freewheeling. Therefore, they were willing to exchange for many things at the exquisite banquet. They didn't care if these things came from clean sources. Therefore, these days, they sent people every day to reprimand him for his ruthlessness towards the exquisite banquet. These things weren't a big deal, but they were messy. For a moment, he didn't think of cutting his hair again. Ning Chun reached out indifferently and held her fingers. The girl's soft fingertips were too fragile. His strength froze for a moment. Then he returned to normal and put her fingers down. Mirrors are what evil creatures like to attach themselves to. Recently, demons have been running rampant. You're a new demon spirit, and one that was nurtured by a Buddhist spiritual pond. You're not on the same path as them. You don't have to harm others. You can continue to purify yourself and cultivate with me. His voice was faint and clear, as if he could clean her ears. Wei Wei Bai couldn't help but reach out and pick her ears. Her brain was numb. No matter what he said, she couldn't help but agree. Was this the king of transmigration marketing? With his voice, it was no wonder that the bald monk could sit there for so long just to listen to her explain the scriptures. After all, this voice and this rhythm of speech were not boring at all. Then Wei Wei Bai said, "I want a mirror." Ning Chen's temper was still very good. "There is no mirror. Mirrors are not good things." Wei Wei Bai, "Then how can I see my own face?" Ning Chun, "What's there to see? Everyone has a face. There is no need to be curious." Wei Wei Bai, then she silently turned around and turned her back to him. She looked like she was annoyed by him not talking to her. Ning Chun was speechless and then silently pondered. Why was she angry again? Did he say anything that made her angry just now? It was the truth. There was nothing inappropriate or rude about it. Then why was she like this? Ning Chun felt that he could never understand what a demon was thinking, although she was a good demon. But his brain didn't seem to be working well. Thinking of this, Ning Chun didn't dwell on it any longer. Instead, he reached out his fingertips and gently pinched the scripture on the table. He planned to pull the scripture out from under his clothes and continue studying it. However, he found that her body was as light as a feather, and she was sitting down hard. This made it impossible for him to pull. If he insisted on pulling, the scripture would shatter. Ning Chun looked down silently for a while. When she finally looked up, the Buddha's prayer beads suddenly flew over and bound way by. The Buddha beads floated up and pulled the enlarged little lotus flower spirit up. Her whole body floated for a moment, and there was some space between her and the table. Ning Chun unhurriedly took out the scripture. The prayer beads immediately loosened and flew away. With a bang, she sat back on the clean table with a dumbfounded look on her face. Ning Chun calmly spread out the scripture and then walked to the side. "Do you want to listen to the scripture? I'll read it to you." Wei Bai immediately refused. "I'm not listening. Do you have a boring plague? It's fine if you're bored to the extreme, but you're still thinking of infecting others to be like you?" Ning Chun patiently explained, "The scripture is very interesting. Wei Bai, when I look at you, I feel that the things you find interesting must be super boring. Damn, super old-fashioned." His EQ was so bad that even dogs would dislike him if he fed him to them. What he found interesting was definitely different from what others found interesting. However, Ning Chun raised his calm eyes and observed her for a moment. Then, he lightly looked away and said to himself, "Although your aptitude may be a little low, with my heavenly jewel protecting you, you can still walk the path of cultivation." Chapter 2943. After saying that, he reached out and gently tapped between her eyebrows. "It's just that you have too many distracting thoughts. You can't be like this. In the future, clear your mind of all the distracting emotions and put aside your meaningless desires. Come and recite scriptures with me every day." Wei Bai reached out and covered her forehead. Her lips pouted and her cheeks immediately puffed up like an inflatable fish. She gritted her teeth and said coldly, "Monk, just say it. If you continue to attack me personally, I won't be polite anymore." Ning Chun suddenly took out a small wooden mallet used to knock a wooden fish from the side of the table and knocked her head. "Clear your mind and listen to my scriptures." He decided to let her walk the path of cultivation so that she wouldn't stray into the evil path and be killed by the great demons. She would cultivate herself and maintain her purity. In the end, she would become a little immortal. She still had a chance to become one of the guardian spirits of Wan Yuan Temple. At that time, she would be one of the holy objects. She could be protected by the temple. For example, the 10,000-year-old turtle in the large pond behind the temple. It was one of the holy objects. The old turtle had already understood human nature and could see through people's hearts. It could even divine things that had not happened. It was very well protected. She could also walk this path. She could cultivate some supernatural powers and then maintain her pure aura. She would not be stained with any evil things, harm people, or eat people. A demon's life was longer than a human's. When he passed away in the future, she could also be protected here. Wei Bai immediately jumped up and got up with both hands covering her head. She glared at him angrily. "Monk, you're not human. Are there no more monks in the temple? Are you starting to force others to be monks?" Ning Chun began to flip to the first page of the scripture. "Listen to me explain the scriptures for 4 hours every day." Wei Bai. It's too hard for her to listen to 4 hours of hypnotism every day. She immediately turned around and rushed out of the door without any hesitation. The door was open. She'd better go to sleep first. However, before she could cross the threshold, her collar was grabbed. She was grabbed by the fingertips and lifted. She became small again. The Buddha's light in her body was absorbed by the Buddha beads. She didn't have enough strength and became small again. And the Buddha beads that he gave her floated above her head again. The prayer beads were under the command of Ning Chun. Ning Chun's expression was indifferent. He put her on the table and said, "Let's begin." Wei Wei Bai immediately stood up. Just as she was about to say something, a shadow suddenly struck her. She looked up in a daze and heard a thud. Very well, she was caught. A large begging bowl fell down with a thud. Wei Wei Bai sat in the dark with a dumbfounded expression. Then, he heard the young man's calm and clear voice. After you finish listening to the scripture, I'll let you go. Wei Wei Bai Ning Chun began to recite some simple scriptures in a low voice. Then he slowly explained. From the bowl came the sound of Wei Wei Bai hammering the bowl, as well as her jumping up and down shouting. Monk, you're committing a crime. You're just a brainwashing maniac. If you have the guts, let me out and I'll beat you to death. Marketing, brainwashing, although the general meaning of these words was known, no one had ever described him in this way. Ning Chan sat at the table with one hand supporting his cheek and the other holding the scripture. His tone was still light and indifferent. It was a lonely night. The sound of the little vixen jumping around was unusually lively. He looked down at the bowl and pursed his thin lips. Then he began to preach again. Perhaps it wasn't for her, but for himself. The night was long. The young man quietly lowered his eyes, but he didn't find it unbearable at all. Ding, the male lead's favorability is at 25. / you'll see it the next time you open the bookshelf. If you like. Chapter 2944. Wei Wei Bai felt like she was going to lose all sense of direction. She asked the system, do you want to get your hair cut and become a nun? The system said, I'll buy you a set of shaving tools. I guarantee that you'll become the most beautiful bald head. Wei Wei Bai touched her thick hair and said, no, I suddenly feel like this is quite good. She had been sitting in the bowl for a week. At first, she thought that the monk was joking, but he really caught her every day and asked her to chant scriptures. So be it. She felt like she could become bigger now. Just a bite of the prayer beads could last for a long time. But every time she was caught, she would become smaller and be thrown into the bowl. Like this. Did he think she was a grasshopper? Did he think she would jump away without being caught? How could she seduce him like this? How could she seduce the monk and make his nose bleed? Then she would kick the monk out. You want me? You're not worthy, you damn bald donkey who only knows how to chant scriptures. This kind of plot made her blood boil just thinking about it. She felt good. This was the essence of the strong female protagonist novel. She suddenly missed the side quest. It was really good to her. She missed the strong female protagonist. Squatting in the bowl for 2 to 3 hours every day, Wei Wei Bai felt like she was about to evolve into a lotus spirit that knew how to beg for food. She knocked on the bowl helplessly. Monk, let me out. Ning Chan sat on the chair and looked at the bowl in his hand indifferently. After he stopped chanting, he said softly, there's still an hour before I let you out. Wei Wei Bai said, I'm annoyed, let me out. Ning Chan said indifferently, you're a lotus spirit. If you're annoyed, you should drink more water. Wei Wei Bai was angry. This is illegal kidnapping, do you know? I don't want to listen to scriptures. I want to do something else. Ning Chin asked good-naturedly, what do you want to do? Wei Wei Bai said, do you? Ning Chin was silent for a moment. What did this mean? Then he understood. You're not strong enough now. If you fight with me, you won't be able to gain any advantage. It's better to listen to scriptures more and cultivate honestly. With your poor aptitude, you'll be able to defeat me in about 80 years. Wei Wei Bai, 80 years. Ning Chun, at that time, I'll probably die of old age, and you'll be able to kill me. Wei Wei Bai, Ning Chun paused for a moment before continuing slowly. You're a monster. You have a long life ahead of you. I'm just a speck of dust in your long life. Bear with it, learn the cultivation method, and become a sacred object. When you remember me after I die, I'm just an insignificant person. I'm not worth your anger. After saying this, Ningchen slowly lowered his eyes and sighed softly. Then he picked up the book and was about to start chanting. However, he heard the little lotus spirit in the bowl suddenly say in a tender voice, Monk, were you sad just now? Ningchen paused in his reading of the scriptures. His eyes were cold, but his thin lips were slightly pursed. He was about to say that he wasn't sad. However, he heard a muffled knocking sound from the bowl, followed by her voice. Don't be sad. You're very important. I like you. I won't forget you. Monk, no matter how long my life is, it's meaningless if you're not with me. Ning-chan was still sitting, but his sitting posture was a little stiff. There was no expression on his delicate and fair face. His fingertips were slightly white as he held the book. Then he lowered his eyes and chuckled softly. The words of a child, "You're not mature yet." In this world, there's no meaning in leaving someone. / save button you'll be able to see it the next time you open the bookshelf, if you like. Chapter 2945. Wei Wei Bai began to kick the alms bowl again. Stinky monk, you still don't believe me? I like you to death. Do you have ears? Won't you be moved after hearing this? Ningchen lowered his eyes and was silent for a while before saying softly, not moved. Then he ignored her and began to recite the scriptures. Wei Wei Bai felt her feet hurt. She kicked a target that was even harder than the alms bowl. Sure enough, the monk meditated for a long time, and his brain and EQ turned to stone. Emotional retarded. He really was emotional retarded. She said to the system powerlessly, I want to change the target. She hadn't had this impulse in a long time. When she met perverts before, she also wanted to change. But after meeting more perverts, she calmed down. One perverts after another, a bunch of targets were setting the standard for the most perverted perverts. In the end, she was used to dealing with these perverts. In the end, when she finally met a non-perverted one, she found that he was even worse than a pervert. Ding, the male lead's favorability has increased to 30. In this week, because of listening to him recite the scriptures, the favorability had increased by 3 points. 28 favorability plus 2 favorability. 30. It wasn't easy. Applause. The system said, it's probably sympathy points. He feels that it's not easy for you, so he gave you a friendly point. The inside of the alms bowl was dark, and the outside of the alms bowl was filled with scriptures. Wei Wei Bai finally held her head with both hands. Forget it, I'll just be a nun. Maybe after becoming a nun, the monk would feel that they were the same kind of people, a match of equal status, and suddenly the favorability would soar to the sky. The system was just about to comfort the host who was on the verge of collapse. But suddenly it heard the side mission ring again. Dear, please check your side mission. If you don't check it, just force it. Please, before 12 o'clock tonight, climb into the target's bed and sing a little star for him to sleep. I am your side mission partner, your godly assistant. Please remember to like. Side mission failure punishment. The host will eat shit with the system and broadcast it to the entire universe. After eating shit, the host will have to give a thumbs up and say that shit is the most delicious. Yay, yay, yay. Already far away side quest note. 00 for your XXXX. I want XXXX your entire family's XXXX. Remember this, when I come back, I'm going to XXXX you. Wei Wei Bai. Wait, what's wrong with the side quest? Such a simple side mission with such a cruel punishment. Also, what kind of confession was this, to leave such a violent and uncensored message? Blocked by the main system? Wei Wei Bai was confused. The system finally explained, it's like this. Recently, the side mission needs to earn money, so it went to a faraway place to do manual labor. Now, the side missions are automatically distributed randomly and are not controlled by the side mission. Most of the random missions are very simple. If the side mission does not destroy the host body, he was still afraid. Now, all of its power was being used to destroy the host body. As a result, when he gave out the punishment mission, he only had enough energy left to start the simplest mission with no rules. 90% of the missions without rules were done by the host himself. The only thing the side mission could do was to specify the punishment. The system glanced at the location of the side mission. In the faraway galaxy, it was mining for a daily wage to offset the interest of the bank debt. This was to ensure that it would not be reformatted by the bank. Ha ha ha. It would be a lifetime of manual labor to pay the interest. Once it stopped paying the interest, it would be destroyed. Slash. Chapter 2946. The next side mission would also be a random mission, and it wouldn't be like this one, where there would be many missions. There would only be 1 or 2 missions. They were all beginner missions with a 90% success rate. The system felt good. It had gotten its revenge. Every single plane came to threaten him and his host. He had long held a grudge against it. "I can't kill you, you little flea." After Wei Wei Bai heard the system's explanation, she suddenly had an indescribable feeling towards the system world. How exploitative was the main system? Her family was poor and couldn't afford a house, so they thought it was bad enough. But the side mission actually reduced them to doing manual labor. She felt that this mission was too simple. Wait, how could she get out? She couldn't get out. She couldn't climb in a bed. She couldn't sing. It was like eating shit and saying it was delicious. She immediately knocked on the door and said to the monk, "Monk, I'm tired. I want to sleep." Ning Chun quietly lowered his eyes and looked at the bowl for a while, then said lightly, "You're too lazy. Your willpower isn't strong enough. Stay here tonight and reflect on yourself. I'll let you out tomorrow." Wei Wei Bai. Then Ning Chun heard a violent voice coming from the bowl. "Stupid monk. Did all the monks in the temple run away, forcing people to listen to you chanting scriptures? What's wrong with you? Let me out. Do you think I can succeed by chanting scriptures? You'll only succeed in pissing me off. I like you. I don't like to hear you chanting scriptures. Let me out. If you don't let me out, I'll tell you, in the future when you're too old to walk, I'll hang you up on a swing. Do you know?" Ning Chun. "Nonsense. You still need to cultivate. I'll lock you up until the day after tomorrow." Wei Wei Bai. She touched her heart, talking to a man of steel. It was simply a heart attack. Forget it. This monk doesn't understand human language. She thought about it. It was better to use the trick of self-injury. Then she said weakly, "Monk, I feel so uncomfortable. I can't breathe." Ning Chan was silent for a while, then said, "Just drink more water." Wei Wei Bai said with difficulty, "Where's the water?" Ning Chan opened the alms bowl and placed a teacup in front of her. The incomparably handsome young man said indifferently, "Drink." Wei Wei Bai became smaller, and she grabbed the teacup with both hands and discovered that she had turned into a crow. The crow that drank water. Even when he moved his mouth closer, he couldn't lick the water. Ning Chan saw that it was difficult for her to drink the water. After thinking for a while, he tilted the teacup and said softly, "Drink it like this." Wei Wei Bai bent down and took a deep breath. Then, she looked up and revealed a happy smile. "Monk, since you're so worried about me, you must like me." Ning Chan said expressionlessly, "Do you still want to drink?" Wei Wei Bai rubbed her belly and shook her head. Then, bang, the alms bowl was put down again. Wei Wei Bai, Ning Chan said indifferently, "Continue listening to the scripture." Wei Wei Bai, Ning Chan looked at the bowl that had calmed down and finally sighed. He had almost let her out. How could she cultivate successfully with such a leisurely temperament? He looked at the alms bowl calmly, and no one knew what he was thinking. Then, he continued to read the scripture in a steady voice. However, Wei Wei Bai didn't see it in the alms bowl. The place where Ning Chun sat had become abnormally terrifying and distorted. The black aura turned into a huge shadow and slowly climbed up from his back. Its pale fingers touched Ning Chen's face. A silent hell was unfolding endlessly outside the alms bowl. The aura of the Buddha bone had accumulated since birth until now, and it had reached a terrifying level. // Chapter 2947. Ning Chen's heart just had a trace of desire, a crack. The dark aura had already seeped out everywhere. Ning Chan glanced at the pale finger on his shoulder indifferently. The owner of the finger was the pale girl, still with Wei Wei Bai's face. His desire was just a little bit. The dark hell was full of her shadow. Ning Chan calmly stretched out his fingertip and shattered the girl's shadow. But the shadow that stretched out behind him and imprinted on the wall was abnormally terrifying and unbelievably huge. The shadow was twisting and swaying. Although it was silent, it sounded like thousands of murmurs in Ning Chen's ears. The beautiful young man was already indifferent. He stared at the alms bowl, Everything else was an illusion. Only this alms bowl was the real thing. When the shadow covered over, Ning Chun calmly opened the alms bowl. He saw Wei Wei by sitting with her back to him, looking blankly at the suddenly bright place. Then she reacted and snorted coldly. Damn monk, didn't you want to lock me up until the day after tomorrow? You'd better lock me up until you die. I've never seen a monk as annoying as you. The moment she spoke, all the illusions of the dark hell, they were all shattered one by one. Her clear and lovely voice was like the clear spring water, washing away the dark aura. Her original body was a purified body, so as long as she stayed by his side, she could always stay awake. Ning Chun looked down at her for a while, then slowly stretched out his fingertips and gently rubbed her head like a feather falling to the ground. It's none of your business. If you're tired, you can rest. When Wei Wei Bai heard this, her eyes immediately lit up. She turned around and revealed a cute smile. You said it. I won't listen to you chanting scriptures. Ning Chen's calm eyes fell on her face for a while before moving away indifferently. Well, I'll end it early today and continue tomorrow. However, the little lotus fairy turned her head coldly again. Humph. Ning Chen. He thought that she would not speak for a long time. He retracted his fingertips and was about to return the scriptures to the monk when he heard the little lotus fairy say softly, If you can always be here, I don't mind chanting scriptures every day. I'm angry that you said you will die. Even if I die, you won't die. These words were willful. Who wouldn't die? Although there were thousands of capable people in the world, there would always be those with longevity. But he had never seen Sor become an immortal. Humans were humans, after all. As long as demons did not harm others excessively and did not have any negative karma, they could live as long as heaven and earth. Ning Chun explained calmly. Everyone has to die eventually. Wei Wei Bai suddenly turned her head. Her eyes were red as she said, Monk, do you even understand a woman's heart? I said that you were not to die. Would it kill you to agree? You're simply unreasonable. Bastard, you don't even know how to coax people. You damn bald donkey. You're just a piece of rotten wood. Ning Chun was stunned. There were a few words stuck in his mouth, but he couldn't say them. Only her red eyes made him feel stifled. It seemed a little stuffy. He thought for a moment and poked her back with his fingertips. Wei Wei Bai immediately turned away. Don't touch me. I'm angry. Ning Chun was silent again. Then he silently retracted his finger. Wei Wei Bai suddenly turned around and hugged his finger. Why aren't you touching me? Do you dislike me? Ning Chun was silent for a while before he said softly, You asked me not to touch you. Wei Wei Bai glared at him coldly. I said I won't touch you. I said I don't want to listen to you chanting scriptures. So why did you do it? When did you become so obedient? Sometimes you have to listen to a girl's words. // save button. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.